All right, there we go. And we should be live. Everybody should be able to see and hear me, and hope that's the case. But hey, everybody out there, welcome back. I did not expect to be doing another one of these. Oh, let me fix my camera here since we're getting everything set up. There we go. That's a little bit better. I wasn't expecting to do another one of these, actually. I was expecting to have been done with political stuff. But, you know, the election 2020 is the gift that keeps on giving, right? So before we get into it, first off, I just want to let everybody know I got my water. I got my hot cocoa in my Parks and Recreation Ron Swanson mug because you need hot cocoa when you're talking this stuff. And I am, wanting to kind of discuss some of the things that have happened because there are a lot of things that have happened over the last year. I'm sorry, the last month that have, quite frankly, been disconcerting, that have been concerning to a certain point, and also have been very much things that have made me hopeful. And when I put all of that together, I get really, really excited at what I see. But I also get a little concerned because as much positive things that have occurred since the last time we spoke, there's a lot of weird things kind of going on out there. And I tend to believe that, you know, lies and deception shouldn't stand scrutiny under the light of day. And I believe that that's the case here. I believe that in order for us to, you know, move along as Americans, as us to move along as a people, we have to be able to look at everything that's kind of going on and to be able to say, okay, this is what's happening, and really look at what is being said versus what is being done, because these are two different things. And a lot of folks have been asking me privately, hey, what's been going on with this? What's been going on with that? And there are a lot of questions, a lot of questions. And it's difficult to answer all of them, especially when you're being asked on Twitter or you're on Facebook and you don't want to make a bunch of posts. So I figured, hey, let's make this easy and let's just go ahead and talk about it. You know, and I'm going to put myself on a timer here. I'm going to put myself on about, let's see, it's about 4:40. I'm going to give myself to about 6:15, and then I'm going to call this. So we're going to go about maybe 90 minutes tops. If we don't get a lot of questions, if we don't get a lot of people asking things, that's okay too. That's no problem. I'd much rather have less things to talk about than have to crazily talk about all these weird fringe elements. But let's go ahead and start with the big question that I've been getting asked a lot. Is there any chance that Donald J. Trump is going to be sworn in as president on January 20th, 2020? Is there a remote possibility that could happen? The answer is no. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about why the answer is no. But better is actually, I want you to know that the reason why I know this is because I've been following some really strong lawyers who actually tweet this stuff out over on Twitter. And they're actually some phenomenal cats, and I highly suggest you go and check them out. In fact, if you'd like to know who they are, I'm more than happy to put their names in a crawl at the bottom, and you can go and check them out. Maybe, I don't know, when this all settles, maybe I'll try to get one of them to come on because I have started up some conversations with them. And these are the folks that I go to and I listen to. Some of them are conservative, some of them are liberal, some of them are moderates. I tend to try to cast a wide net so that way I get a good sense of what the hell is going on. And hold on, hot cocoa break, because Laura made me hot cocoa. She's downstairs making items for folks, which, by the way, if you're curious about anything that we've been making lately over on Pop Cycle, you will know that we actually have gotten a ton of orders for a bunch of Christmas ornaments and a bunch of other stuff. Almost all of them are done. She's basically finishing them up. She's wrapping them out, and I think they're going out tomorrow or Thursday. So if you have an order with us, you're basically done at this point, which is awesome. So hold on, cocoa break. It's good cocoa. But one of the things I want to talk about is the concept of, is there a way for Donald J. Trump to actually stay in office come January 20th, 2021? And the answer from everything I can see is a resounding no. First off, a lot of people have been asking about what if it's a contested election. Now, for those of you who don't know, some of this will get into the weeds, and I do not necessarily want to get into the super minutia of this, but to paraphrase this down for you to be able to understand a little bit more succinctly, a contested election basically means that there is no obvious winner inside the Electoral College. So somehow, if the Electoral College was not able to give the majority of the votes to a particular candidate, it becomes what is known as a contested election. And a lot of people are saying that's kind of the game plan right now. The Trump campaign is trying to muddy the waters so that way nobody gets a majority, and it has to go to the House of Representatives. Under federal law, if you're not able to get a winner under the Electoral College, it goes to the House of Representatives, and each state gets a vote. There are 50 votes plus the District of DC, and there are more red states, quote unquote, than blue states. The problem with that particular theory is it's actually kind of crazy how this works, but the way it works is this. The House of Representatives currently is a Democratic majority. That means that the current Speaker of the House is the first person to be sworn in on January 1st, 2021. If they know that this is coming and they know that people are going to be contesting this election, all they have to do is simply not seat Republican voters. Now, I know that sounds sketchy, and it is. It's basically political handball. This actually happened back in 1877. We actually have a president who was sworn in 1877 because of stuff like this. And essentially what's happened since then is they've made rules that say that once the Speaker of the House is sworn in, then she or he swears in everybody else underneath them. So all the Speaker would have to do is simply not swear in any of the Republican candidates because they're saying, hey, this election is fraudulent. We don't necessarily believe that these elections are free and fair. So we, are casting doubt on it. She says, fair enough, then we will not place you in your seat until we're able to resolve this, which is completely legal. She could swear in the Democratic counterparts, which means that there are Democratic representatives in every single state. That means you have 50 blue members and they all vote overwhelmingly for Biden. Now, is that a cheap way of getting around it? Absolutely. Is there a possibility that could happen? Almost none. And I mean that, almost none. And that is a really important thing for you to understand. We're talking about the percentage points. That's like a 2% chance. We're not even talking like a full percentage point. And the reason why is that everybody who is a part of this in the Senate and in the House of Representatives, they know what's coming. They know where we are, and they know the math. They know the math is not in their favor, and that a Biden presidency is on the horizon. Now, some people say, well, yeah, but the House only represents the president. The Senate elects the vice president. And that's true. There is a possibility that if that happened, that 0.5% chance happened, that, yeah, you could get Vice President Pence and President Biden together in the White House for 4 years. Would that happen? I don't think so. But that is one version that could have happened. Now, again, that is incredibly unlikely, and that is called the contingent election. And that is something that absolutely has almost no chance of occurring. And we're talking infinitesimal chance. But there's also another version of a contested election that people have been talking about. But they use this term intermittently. By the way, if you have questions about election stuff, if you have questions about the lawsuits, if you have questions about what's currently going on and what the stratagems are, or if you want to talk about some conspiracies, just put them in the comments. I have the comments up. I'm more than happy to answer any questions. I've been doing a lot of studying about this. We just got a comment here, hold on, which is these situations almost sound fictitious. And you know what? You're not wrong. I mean, this really does sound fictitious. The situation is a little weird. Now, if there's something specific you'd like to ask about, feel free to ask. I'll be more than happy to tell you more about it. But you're absolutely right. It is a very, very shot in the dark scenario. And let me just put this on Front Street again. The chance of anything other than Vice President Biden be, or I'm sorry, President-elect Biden, excuse me, President-elect Biden and Vice President-elect Kamala Harris being put into the White House is almost nil. We're talking, fractions of a percentage point that something else could happen. And in none of these situations does it result in a Trump presidency. The only way we get to a Trump's presidency is if we actually have a revolution. We're talking guns in the streets. We're talking people actually murdering one another. The most horrific outcome possible in a democracy. Obviously, nobody wants that. And quite frankly, if you believe that's what's coming, then you should be stocking up on guns right now. But the chances of that happening are absolutely none. There could be some riots in the streets at one point once this all settles down. Sure, just like there were people who were protesting in the streets when Trump was sworn in 4 years ago. That's a possibility. Will it turn violent? Will it turn out to where we have to actually have people shot in the street as far as actual conflicts? I really doubt that. But I never say never because you don't know. Certain people could get upset enough where they try something. But I really believe that those will be super small, like 40, 50, maybe a couple hundred people spread out over the country trying something, and it would be squashed pretty quickly. But I sincerely doubt that's going to happen. Now, back to what I was saying. Contingent elections in general are these ideas that what if the system doesn't work the way it's supposed to work? And right now, one of the questions that are being asked is what if the GOP legislatures of these battleground states try to send their own slate of electors instead of whom have been certified under the governor? And again, hot chocolate break. In case you're curious why I'm drinking hot chocolate right now, it is cold as hell in the house. We got down to like the mid 50s, or I'm sorry, we got down to the 30s last night, but the temperature today has only gotten like to the mid 50s, upper 60s. It's been pretty cool actually, and the house has stayed pretty chill, not cold, but just chill. And yeah, the hot cocoa keeps you nice and toasty. It's a good excuse to break out your warm beverages and stuff. So yeah, cheers. Now that said, as I was saying, there is this idea that what if state legislatures try to send up their own slate of electors instead of who have been certified by the governor? So this is how this works. And it's actually really, really, really action does. Wait. I'm not sure exactly what you're asking me there, Kahui. Kahui asked me, action does the returning. If you want to elaborate on that a little bit for me, buddy, I'll be more than happy to elaborate for you, but I'm not quite sure what you mean there. And I'm actually kind of like I'm getting a little bit of a delay on some of these comments. I'm not sure. Did the returning? What is the returning? I'm not sure what the returning is. Hold on, I'm gonna finish off my hot chocolate here real quick. It looks like I might actually have a weird delay going on in my comments here. So if I am getting a delay, I do apologize for that. Let me go ahead and I'm going to pull up just real quick so that way I have it, and I'll just mute that feed. That's weird. Just in case it is me, let me mute this page just so that way it's not going to. There we go. Don't think there's a delay. General. Okay, Switch is being weird in general. Okay, so maybe it's just me then. But yeah, I'll just keep that up just in case. But yeah, it looks like it's okay. So I'm going to go ahead and let that run the way it is. Let's double check that. And okay, yeah, so it's weird. It looks like there's a weird delay, but maybe not. Sorry about that. But Kahui, if you could elaborate a little bit, I'm more than happy to answer your question or your statement. But yeah, Twitch does act like it's acting a little weird today. But so this idea of sending other electors instead, I returned, but in the stipulated. Oh, got it. You did the returning. Okay, look, I'm dumb. I'm talking election stuff, and I was trying to understand what the returning was. Like, what, you mean you took ballots? I was like, but wait, aren't you overseas? My brain. Okay, I'm clearly in election mode, and my brain is not catching any of that at all. Oh, I'm stupid. Okay. Oh, man. So anyways, oh, that was funny. Sorry about that. But yeah, oh, excuse me. Oh, man, I'm choking on hot chocolate. So anyways, this idea of sending a second slate of electors, in addition to the original electors, would never actually happen. And this is actually a really interesting idea because basically federal law says that each state and the state legislature is beholden to the laws that they write in order to send up their slate. It gets really muddy, but basically the translation of what it says is this. On election day, there are laws in place that say this is what happens when you vote. And unless somebody has changed that law prior to election day, anything you try to do after that is irrelevant. It is moot, especially if it's certified by the governor and the secretary of state. So all the battleground elections that battleground states that have gone for Biden have certified for Biden, meaning that even if the state legislature tried to send up their own slate of elections, their own laws do not allow them to be accepted because the default ruling on a federal statute says the governor, the Secretary of State, and the voters have voted their case. Even if the legislature tries to argue that, they cannot retroactively change the rules. It's like saying, if you catch a fly ball, you're out, unless Bob does it. And when Bob does it, it's cool because we like Bob. You can't change the rules after the fact. So we do have a question here, which is, wouldn't a move like this be seen as 100% a dictatorship move? Hard to believe that all the Republicans would stand for such a move. And you know what? you're absolutely correct as far as, does it feel like a dictatorship move? It really, really does. It absolutely feels like a move that would be seen and censured as a move towards autocracy or a dictatorship. But here's the thing, and this is something I really, really want to stress. All of these scenarios that we're talking about right now are technically legal. We are a democratic republic, meaning that we are a democracy, but we're also a republic, meaning that we have representation in our government bodies. So we elect people to represent us as our basically our betters, I guess would be the only way to say it, which is a really horrible way of saying it, but we're basically electing somebody to speak for us as a unified voice. And so with that in mind, there are some rules that give them power, but it's technically not illegal, but it's also incredibly difficult to make this happen. And when I say incredibly difficult, I mean extremely difficult. And let me just throw you out a couple scenarios. One, under the law, if something has been certified for a candidate, once it's certified, it is almost impossible to take back certification. It's done. So at this point, we're talking about Trump has basically lost almost all of his opportunities to overturn these decisions because the states have certified them. Two, when those certifications go to the federal court and the Electoral College goes to meet, they're going to go ahead and they're going to seat the people who have the certificate from the governor. Three, this is where it gets interesting. If somehow somebody was able to do enough legal maneuvering, and this is incredibly important to understand, if somebody really said, nope, we are not going to do this, there is something called the double affirmation clause, which basically means that both the Senate and the House of Representatives have to accept the votes that are there. Meaning that if anybody says, nope, we will not take these electors and we will not do this, everything stops. It comes to a standstill. What that means is the election process freezes. And until the Senate and the House of Representatives come to an agreement, nothing can move forward. But here's the bitch about it. If they do that, you know who's the next in line of secession? On January 20th at 12:01 p.m., Nancy Pelosi becomes president of the United States because the Speaker of the House is the number 3 person in the nation after President, Vice President, Speaker of the House. So if they tried to muck up the Electoral College and try to screw it up, all the House has to say is, we're not going to recognize your electors. And until you realize you guys are just pulling some serious anti-democratic bullshit, we're not going to do anything about it. And as soon as they say that, they can stretch that out for years. Fun fact, back in the I want to say it was the 60s or the 70s. No, I'm sorry. It was the 70s. Back in the 70s, there was a candidate who was completely tied with the mob. This guy was known to be a true son of a bitch scumbag. And the problem is that they knew that there was something going on with his election being going into the House of Representatives, but they couldn't prove it. So what they did is they swore at everybody but him. And they said, we're going to have to look at this. And what they did is they basically sat on it for 2 years, going into how he got elected, all this stuff. And he wasn't allowed to get his seat until almost 2 years later. A House of Representative term is only 2 years long, meaning that basically they froze him out. And because they are not held by judicial process, they're allowed to do that. So Nancy Pelosi could simply just say, we're not going to take any of this. You're going to take these certifications. These states did their job. And if you're going to screw with us, we're just going to freeze the whole system. And all hail the chief, Nancy Pelosi is now president. And here's the bitch of it. Because she's the acting president, there's no vice president, meaning that if she dies or something happens to her, it goes down to somebody else. And again, nothing else changes. So this is like an apocalypse scenario that will absolutely not happen because I guarantee you, as much as the Senate and Mitch McConnell and the rest of the GOP do not like do not like the fact that Biden won, they really don't want President Pelosi. So you have to keep that in mind. Hi, sweetie. You want to say hey? Do you want to show them what you're working on? So we have a couple people here who have cut yet. We have a lot of baby Yoders. I'm sorry, Grogu's. So yeah, that is pretty crazy. So that is a little nuts. But yeah, do you want to come sit?
No.
No? Okay. But it's a pretty crazy scenario, and it's not insane to think that could happen. Let's see here. Okay, got it. I was looking at the comments, seeing if anybody had a question here for me. So when you look at all of these wild and crazy scenarios, yes, they're technically legal, but there are mechanisms in place to completely lock it down in case something like this happens, in case somebody tries to circumvent the system. And that's something we really need to talk about, because what we've been shown this entire time has been the fact that we have a candidate, a president, who from the very beginning, back in 2016, 2015, when he started this whole crazy idea of becoming president, he said, the system is rigged, the system will never let me be president, and the only way I'll ever accept these these results is if they're in my favor. He has never, ever been sincere about accepting legal votes unless they're in his favor. So when it happened in 2016, yeah, he was fine with it. Oh, this is great. This is fantastic. I'm president. But as we got closer to the 2020 election, way back in March, he started saying that it's fraud. There's nothing but screw ups, and it's all going to be bad, and it's going to be terrible, and there's no way I'm going to win. He basically worked from a place of weakness. But here's the thing I like to tell people, because when we get right down to the conspiracy theory stuff, there's something that you have to remember. The president of the United States has the full power and authority of the entire United States government behind him. He has the FBI, the NSA, multiple different types of departments of justice, legal systems, as well as spy apparatus, and the ability to investigate all sorts of types of corruption and different types of legal chicanery. He could have spent the entire year of 2020 investigating, overturning, and more perfecting the mail-in ballot systems so that way we could all see them as being fair and balanced. But that doesn't help him prior to the race. So what he does is he sits on it and he waits on it and he says fraud, 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 fraud. And what happens is that all the local governments, people in Georgia and Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Arizona, they do their absolute best to make sure everything they do is airtight. And they did a pretty damn good job of it. They really worked their ass off to make sure that what they did was above reproach. And they tried to be as transparent as possible about all their proceedings, to the point where they said, please let us count the votes early so that way we don't have to wait hours and days and weeks so people don't feel like anything improperly is being done. But again, that doesn't help the GOP. The GOP says, no, we don't want to do that. We want you to count the votes after the fact, because what they can do is claim an early victory. And then they can say, see, they're trying to change the vote after the fact. But of course, as we've discussed on this show before, Arizona flipped blue very early on election night. And because of that, their entire plan came to a halt, because all of a sudden there was doubt on whether they could claim a sweeping victory. And as we saw, as the votes were continuing to be counted and more counties were being brought in, more and more states started to flip blue that they were not expecting. And now they're stuck and they're saying, well, they clearly did this election wrong. We need to go back and prove that there's fraud, because that's the only way to prove this. Again, you are the most powerful person on the planet with the most powerful apparatus of legal and checks and balances systems available to you to ensure a free and fair democracy. You could have completely brought lawsuit after lawsuit after lawsuit and charges to anybody and anyone that you needed to ensure a safe and free election. You did not do that. And when I say you, I mean Mr. President. And as a result, what we get is an election that ran perfectly, but he's now able to say is fraudulent. Period, full stop, that's your story. It did not behoove him to do this prior, because that means he didn't have something to bang on a drum. So now he starts to say, look at all this fraud, look at it. And the problem is that you can yell fraud to the cows come home. But in America, we have something called due process. And due process is this little tiny son of a bitch clause that says that you are innocent until proven guilty, meaning that when you're claiming a crime or you're claiming fraud, there is a certain burden of proof, specifically when you're talking about fraud, specifically when you're talking about elections. So when you're talking about election fraud, there is a high bar, meaning that you have got to bring substantial, conclusive legal evidence that can hold up under scrutiny. So 40 lawsuits later, only one has gone towards Trump. And that one was basically saying, hey, we can't really see the people who are counting the ballots from I think it was 20 or 30 feet away. Can we please get as close as 6 feet away? And the judge said, yes, that's reasonable. That's the one they've won. The other 39 lawsuits have been absolutely they've been destroyed. They've been absolutely destroyed on the facts. And what's really, really, really damning about this is that on the facts, they don't even claim fraud. They claim basically miscellaneous bureaucratic BS. Oh, well, because the person didn't date their ballot, it should be invalidated. Oh, because the person showed up in person, it should be this kind of a ballot versus that kind of a ballot. Oh, because it wasn't in the extra secret envelope, that ballot should be invalidated. However, so on and so forth. And it is incredibly frustrating to see this kind of a response, because every single time the judge says, "Are you claiming fraud?" And here's the thing, in the court of law, these lawyers, Rudy Giuliani, Sidney Powell, Julie, whatever her name is, I think it's Ellis, they have to, under pains of perjury, tell the truth. So they can't claim fraud unless they have evidence of fraud. They don't bring fraud to the table. They bring a suspicion of fraud, but that's not high enough. There are rules in place that says you can't just bring a suspicion. You have to have proof, and they can't do it. So what happens is they say, no, we're not elected. We're not alleging fraud. But then on Twitter, Trump is going, look at all this fraud. Look at all this fraud. And they point to stuff that's easily explained away or easily debunked within 30 seconds of actually digging. But that's where the greater conspiracy comes in. Trump has been for years trying to tell you to ignore what you see and ignore what you hear and ignore what all the news stations are telling you. If they're not telling you what you want to hear, they are fake. They are false. They are lies. And that's not how a democracy, that's not how news, that's not how society works. There are truths. There are facts. There are things on the ground that no matter how much you may dislike them, you have to accept. We learned this lesson 4 years ago when we had Donald Trump sworn into office. Laura and I and a bunch of our friends, we were not happy about it. But we're like, you know what? It happened. This is where we are. Moving on. And you know what? That's what you've got to do. Sometimes your side wins, sometimes your side loses. And for those of you who said, hey, he has every right to exhaust his legal options, he has. His legal options now are basically what they're calling right now is they're calling them the squid apocalypse, because there's this whole thing called the Kraken, which is Sidney Powell saying she's got this Kraken of evidence, which is complete hearsay and basically a bunch of other claims that have already been thrown out from lower courts and said, this is not true evidence. This is not real evidence. You've not brought us anything that we can validate. You're bringing suspicions and you're bringing affidavits from people who don't understand the processes that they're observing. That is damning. And I don't say that to rub anybody's nose in it. I don't say that to say, oh, see, look, you don't know what you're talking about. I say that because in a court of law, you can't hold on to evidence and wait till you get to a higher court. So one of the conspiracy theories right now is, well, we don't want to show our hand till we get to the Supreme Court, because once we get to the Supreme Court, they'll back us because it's a conservative court. Okay. That's always been the fear, right? That if there was a conservative majority on the Supreme Court come election day, that they would give the presidency to Trump. Well, there's a lot of BS attached to that. So there's some stuff that we have to kind of talk about. In every single case that is brought to the Supreme Court, the rulings are going to be based on what is brought to them. For instance, in Pennsylvania right now, there is a ruling that has thrown out a lawsuit trying to overturn 1.8 million votes and give the electoral votes for Pennsylvania to Trump because of a possible infraction of votes that number in maybe the low, and I mean low, 1,000, like 1,200 votes. So they're trying to throw out 1.8 million for like 1,200 votes. That doesn't really match up. So the problem with that is they then say, okay, well, we have all this going on, but then we also have all this other alleged impropriety. The judge looked at it, said, you can't, this does not hold muster. There's no legal evidence for any of this. Case dismissed with prejudice. So they appeal it, and they appeal it badly. And what they actually appeal was the fact that they did not like the fact that the judge didn't let them amend their complaint. In a federal court of law, or in a court of law, you have the ability to make a complaint, and then you have the chance to amend that complaint one time. After that one time, you have to be given what they call leave in order to amend it again. So basically, they made it. They then tried to amend it. And then all the lawyers left, and Rudy Giuliani came in, and Rudy Giuliani said, hey, can I amend it another time? And the judge said, hell no. Basically, the judge was like, you know, you want to delay? You want a continuance. You now want another chance to amend. No, you're brought in. You should be up to speed. If you're not up to speed, let the case go. They said, no, we want to continue with the case. He said, fine, bring it to me. And then he dismissed it with prejudice, meaning that they can't bring those claims back to them. So it goes to appeals. The appellate court said, well, you appealed wrong. You didn't give us the proper paperwork. The judge below you got it dead on right. You're completely stupid for trying this. And the only thing you appealed was the fact that you were not allowed to add on another amendment. You were not allowed to amend your original complaint. So even if they had ruled in their favor, it goes back down to the original judge, and he gets to rule on the second amended version of their complaint. Now, if you basically just called him a hack, you went up to the the state Supreme Court above them, the appellate court above them, and they basically smack it back down to him. Do you think he's really going to give you an honest shake? Maybe. Or maybe he's going to smack you even harder the next time. So the appellate court said, no, we're not doing that. So now they've written it in such a way that the Supreme Court's like, I'm not touching this. But let's say, for instance, they do. Oh God, here we are. This is what everybody talks about. We are at the Supreme Court. We have brought the Pennsylvania case to the Supreme Court. Here, look at it. They're going to look at it and they're probably just going to laugh. But let's say they don't. And again, this is me giving them the benefit of the doubt over and over and over again. But let's say we go all the way down that rabbit hole and they actually say, okay, we'll listen to it. Yeah, you're right. You should have had a chance to add on another amendment. We rule in Donald Trump's favor. You know what that does? It sends it all the way back down to the Pennsylvania court, and now that judge has to rule on their second amendment. And if they decide, and if he decides to crush it, crush. That's it. It's done. The Supreme Court did absolutely nothing to give Donald Trump anything else. So now they have to then appeal that and then try to make their way back up to the Supreme Court. And here's the thing: even if they overturned Pennsylvania, Donald Trump still would have 286 votes, and he only needs 270 votes. So he's still above the needed requisite in order to be president of the United States, which means that they have to do this and successfully find a way to overturn the vote in multiple states, multiple times. They're 1 in 39. Every legitimate, hardcore, solid, conservative attorney out there who is like the gold star, A+, this is the guy you want in our corner, or lady, that you want in our corner, have stepped away from Donald Trump. They have resigned. They have decided to no longer have service. They have asked to be let out of the cases. They have left. This elite strike force that's behind is the bottom of the barrel, and it shows. Because their drafts are crap. Their ability to make an argument is crap. And they continue to not bring evidence. So I have some questions here. Hold on. So let me see here. So we have a question, which is, so is the reality of a pardon becoming more and more real? It depends on what you mean by a pardon. Is he going to pardon himself? Possibly. A lot of the attorneys that I talk to, their assertion is, they're split 50-50. Half of them say, yeah, we absolutely think that he can pardon himself. The other half say, absolutely not. He cannot pardon himself. But they all agree that this is something that has never happened before, which means that more than likely it will have to go to a court in order to actually figure out if he can do it or not. They all agree this is untried. Like, no president has ever tried this. The thing that they all kind of hope will happen to just kind of make this all go away is he steps down and he lets Pence give him a pardon like the day before Biden's sworn in, something along those lines. Will that happen? My guess is his ego won't let it. I think Donald Trump will be the person who refuses to actually admit defeat and admit that he lost until the very bitter end, even at the detriment of his own security. I don't know. That's a very good question, and there's no clear answer, and there's no clear legal answer because we've never been here before. But in the ultimate scheme of things, I would imagine that if he tried to, chances are he'd probably be able to pardon himself. Will he do it? I don't know. I think he'd be very, very, very silly to not try to find a way to cover himself and give himself a blanket of protection. But I don't know if his ego will allow him to do that, and that's a very, very big problem for him. So I'm not sure. I really don't know what will happen in that particular situation. And that's the interesting part about this is that, is Trump so blind with rage that he lost that he'd actually, potentially hurt himself in the long run, because he can't simply let it go and find a way to protect himself and his assets after the fact. We also have a comment here from Calamity Coyote. Hey, Calamity, how you doing? That said, it's highly doubtful that'll happen. Absolutely. A lot of the stuff we're talking about right now is highly, highly doubtful that any of this stuff will happen. As far as the Supreme Court overturning this stuff, it is just very, very, very unlikely that any of this will occur. And the reason why is the writing is on the wall. The experts that I'm hearing from, the reports that I'm reading from, just like AP News and Reuters, all concur that people inside the White House know this is done, that Trump is slowly accepting the fact that he is not going to be president in a little over 50 days, that it is essentially a done deal, and it is time to start to find a way to move past it. The problems that we're having right now is that while it's being said on the inside, and they all know that there's nothing else that they can do, what he's projecting on social media is incredibly dangerous. I don't know if you've been paying attention to this, but there have been numerous death threats to Republican-leaning elected officials in Georgia, the Secretary of State, the Assistant Secretary of State, various workers below them, just people who are doing their jobs, technicians and stuff. They've been getting death threats. People have been threatening to hurt, harm their children, harm their families, harm them for simply doing their job. In fact, just about an hour and a half ago, the Assistant Secretary of State went on an entire press conference on the state grounds, saying this is irresponsible. It is absolutely damaging to our republic. We have been as transparent as possible. We have allowed for as much information as we possibly can, and it is still not enough. Short of saying Donald Trump won this election and we're going to prove it, we cannot. They will not let this go, and people are now threatening them. They're actually threatening them. This has also been happening in Michigan. If you guys were paying attention to what happened a few weeks ago in Wayne County, which is the county that also holds Detroit, there was a moment where they were not going to certify because the Republican canvassers believed that there was something fishy, and those people got death threats from Democrats. And then when they actually decided to certify anyways, the Republicans came after them. Nobody should be threatened for doing their job. I may not like it if they decided to not certify, but there are mechanisms to make sure that the process continues on. You should not threaten somebody and say that you're going to show up at their house and murder their kids and eat their dogs or whatever the hell is going on. That is repugnant, and that is not who we are. But we also have to remember that we live in an age of social media where people have digital courage, where they have the audacity and they have the mental fortitude to say whatever they want to, whenever they want to, however they want to, with very little regard to what it's actually doing to other people. And that's what a lot of people, especially on a local level, are requiring and asking of the president right now. Stop this before someone is murdered. Because if he keeps going, there's a possibility that one day we're going to hear that the Secretary of State of Arizona, or maybe their kid or something like that, has been killed. Hell, prior to the election, there was a plot to kidnap and possibly kill for sedition the governor of Michigan. These are unacceptable outcomes. And that's one of the reasons why I want to do a 30-day later, because we need to talk about the fact that these conspiracy theories are absolutely not part of who we are as a people. And when I say that, I don't mean it to say that we don't have conspiracy theories, but I mean it to say that we must be better than this. And I personally believe that a lot of it is hot air. I think these are people who are going through the grieving process. And if you know the grieving process, you know that the first thing that happens is basically you're in denial, then you're in bargaining. It's denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and then acceptance. Clearly, we're in that bargaining situation. People are still angry. They're going through it. They're having a hard time with it. But it's a very, very dangerous place. And it actually reminds me of McCarthyism, which is something I want to talk about for a few minutes. But before I do, let me go back to the comments here. So we got a comment here from Hallinan, which is the fact that the White House staff are on LinkedIn at the moment looking for work tells the whole story. That's true. Absolutely. We also have one. This is a very big comment. I don't know if it'll show the whole thing, but I'll try. Okay, so this is a cool idea. Hello, everybody. Social media is just making all this worse. Twitter has made it worse pretty much for everybody. Politicians need to stop tweeting and start using their power and platform for good, not random ideals and facts where they think that whatever they say will get liked a lot, where most likely a lot of people think it's repugnant. That is absolutely true. That is 100% one of the big problems. People are using Twitter as a platform thinking that it's legislation, and it's not. They're using it as a platform to try to change people's minds. And yes, there's a way to try to change people's minds, and there's a way to try to bring your case to the people. Absolutely. And that's a very powerful tool. But this demagoguery that's occurring, it's happened before, and it will happen again. And that brings us to the McCarthy era. For those of you who are not familiar, there was a senator in the late 40s and into the 50s known as McCarthy. I forget what his first name is off the top of my head, and I forget about it. I always call him Senator McCarthy. But Senator McCarthy was basically the architect and the ringmaster of what is called the Red Scare. Now, some of you may have heard of the Blacklist, and this is not like the guy who used to do the scripts or the TV show The Blacklist. This was specifically a blacklist about people who were accused of being communists and socialists in America, and they were not allowed to work in their chosen field, particularly sciences, entertainment, and so forth. They were more or less maligned as people, and they were kind of pushed to the fringe of society. And this was because this man, McCarthy, continued to basically drum up conspiracy theory after conspiracy theory. He said the greatest fraud ever perpetrated in America was happening right now in 1950. And he was like, and I'm going to uncover it. And he spent years on television, on radio, well, radio mostly, but he on newspapers and on radio, and basically decrying that everything that was going on right in front of you was actually one giant ploy by the communists and the socialists to more or less destroy America. And he found that this was actually something that gave him more power, and people became afraid of him. There were entire systems of government that were afraid of him. The GOP let him continue to talk because people started voting more Republican because they were buying into this, and it continued to grow. And then he started to turn on other people. He started to turn on the president of the United States. He started turning on the Department of Justice. He started turning on other members of Congress. And he would continue to go further and further and further. And what the GOP, what the Republicans realized was that even though they had gotten a political bump in the short term for this, what they had done is they had let a monster inside of their house. And this monster was wrecking the place up. And if they weren't careful, they were going to go down with the ship. And again, forgive the mixed metaphors. So it became a moment where he started going after the army. He literally was trying to say that the entire military armed services was full of communists, was full of socialists, and that they were absolutely hell-bent on bringing down America from the inside, and that they were going to have tanks roll down the street and shoot Ma and Pa Kent. And there is the famous quote, which I'm going to screw up right now because I'm always bad at paraphrasing and remembering them, but it was, "Have you no decency, sir? Have you ever had decency?" And it was from one of his most stalwart supporters. And that was the moment that things started to break away from him. Very quickly, the Republicans realized, even if it might hurt them politically in the short term, they have to stop this. And they started to rally against him. And they said, we will not allow this man to control our fates. Our party is bigger than one person. And they took that party back. And they took a huge hit politically because of it. It hurt them in a huge way. And it took them quite a while to recover from that. There's a reason why the Democrats had such a freaking strong run through the 60s, was because of the fact that McCarthyism had hurt them so badly. That's what I believe we're seeing right now, is we're seeing the fact that have you no sense of decency, I believe. Yes. It is what it was. But it was this moment, it was this watershed moment where a political party was almost brought down by one man, and they had to rally back from them. That's what's happened now with Trump. We are in what I call a McCarthyism circle, which is they are getting power and they're getting a lot of popularity based on what Trump is saying. But every single time somebody steps out of line from what he considers to be the party line, they're being called rhinos. And if you're not familiar with this term, it is RINO, Republican in name only. And these are people who have been Republicans longer than Donald Trump has been Republican. Because quite frankly, if I remember correctly, he wasn't affiliated with any political party until about 10 years ago. And even then, it was kind of loosely affiliated. He really wasn't a Republican until he basically ran for nomination. So we're talking about a person who's only been Republican for a few years, but he has become the Republican Party as far as social media is concerned. And so they're afraid of that. And so they're hoping that this all just blows over and they can get control of their party back. But the problem is that the monster is in the house. The monster is sinking the ship. And they have got to actively work against him now because they know where the end game is. They're pushing further and further and further into propaganda. They're not talking about truth. They're not talking about facts. They're talking about conspiracy theories that are on the same par with that guy who hung out with Sasquatch. And that's the thing that we're talking about right now, is we're talking about the people who they have in these affidavits who are going in front of courts and they're trying to submit as evidence have the same critical validity as somebody who said that they were kidnapped by aliens. Now, there might be some circumstantial evidence to maybe help prove that, but nothing that would hold up in a legal court of law. There is no way to actually prove that. So all of a sudden, the burden of proof doesn't fall on the people who are making the accusation. It falls on the people who are being accused. And that's not what we do in this country. If you're accusing a federal institution or a state institution of fraud, you have to bring the evidence. You have to be able to show why the fraud is there. And it has to be overwhelming. That's not what's happening. What's happening is people are latching on to crazy conspiracy theories and they're holding on to it. And when people are actually trying to show them the truth, they say that you're a sheep. They say that you are insane. They say that you're blind or that you don't want to see the truth or that you're buying into fake news. What is truly more fake? News organizations that have been around for over a century, that have been known for telling the truth, that have been known for breaking horrible conspiracies on both sides of the political spectrum. These institutions that have been standing for years, decades, and have had a very good track record of being honest and neutral. And I'm not talking about the talking heads. I'm not talking about cable news. I'm talking about places like the Washington Post, the New York Times, ABC News, NBC, CBS, not their cable affiliates, the actual news stations, the ones that give you 30 minutes every night with, I was about to say Dan Rather and Tom Brokaw, like I'm a kid from the 80s, which I am, but you know what I mean. Whoever the current people are. But you know what I'm saying? We're talking about just people who are reporting news. Oh, they're all fake because they're all saying the thing that I don't want to hear. So what do? Oh, I'm going to go to Fox News. Okay, fine. Now Fox News is saying the same thing that they're saying. They're like, this is crazy. He lost. We need to move on and see what's next for the Republican Party. Oh, you're now part of liberal media. You're now fake news. They weren't fake news 48 hours before. Oh, but they're fake news now. So now I'm going over to OAN, right? I'm going over to Breitbart. I'm going over to the extreme right. The only people who are telling me what I want to hear. At some point, you have to ask yourself the question, the fundamental question, and this is one of the reasons why I wanted to do this today, is you have to ask yourself the question, is the hundreds of institutions that are all saying the same thing wrong? And only these two people are really right? Is that what you really think is happening? And if so, how do you actually think we got there? Or is it far more likely that you backed a candidate who's a little loco? You backed a candidate who deals in lies, who deals in grift, who deals in selling you a bag of goods, and then when you bring it home, you find out that you just bought sand. And the people who are feeding you know that you're hungry to be told something to make you comfortable. Breitbart and OAN and these other media stations, they don't care if you believe them or not. They want you to tune in. You're paying them to feed you lies. Your clicks and your time in front of their screen gives them revenue. So they're going to continue to feed you those things. The people who have no skin in this game other than trying to tell the truth, who don't have the ratings, are all saying the same thing. Lawyers, just today, AG Barr, Attorney General Barr, the highest legal prosecutorial arm in the land, who freaking 30 days ago started a campaign to find horrible evidence that would show fraud. A man who was predisposed to finding the worst stuff out, right? I mean, this is a guy who I assumed was going to make shit up in order to prove that there was fraud. Came today to AP News and announced that he had found zero fraud that would account for any kind of changing of the vote in any state or any district. Sure, they found minor things like, oh, this particular envelope wasn't signed, or oh, this guy voted for his mom, but no widespread fraud, nothing remotely coming to what would be needed to overturn the election. And when you think about that for a second, this is Trump's muscle man. This is a guy who believes that the Barr has a philosophy. It is basically presidential powers trump all things. And I know that's weird using his name as an adjective, but you know what I'm saying? That presidential powers are above all other powers, no matter if they're legal, no matter if they're congressional. It is actually the president who is at the top of the food chain, instead of there being three equal forms of government. And in that moment, the president has the power to do whatever he wants. That man who believes the president has sweeping authoritative powers came back today and said, there's nothing there. And as soon as he did, within minutes of him doing it, the wacko people who are representing the Trump campaign in court, Giuliani, this Ellis lady, a couple other people, wrote up a dismissive affidavit that said, with all due respect, the AG doesn't know what he's talking about. He's not done anything that he was supposed to do. The man had the entire power of the legal arm of the United States of America behind him. He had so much power that when he decided to do this, people from the Department of Justice quit. They resigned in protest because it was a huge, huge breaking of the rules. But yet, he doesn't know what he's talking about. These are not people that have your best mind, your best interest at heart. It's all about giving them more power and giving them more spotlight and giving them the attention that they want. This is a man who feeds off of chaos. This is not a person who is thinking about you. This is a person who's thinking about how this can benefit him. If you want a good example, just a couple of days ago, Trump said, I'm not fighting this fight for me. I'm fighting it for the 73, now 74 million Americans who voted for me. And you know what? Fair enough. You know what Biden said? Biden said, I know you may not have voted for me, but I'm here to represent and fight for every single one of you. He's fighting for all 300 plus million people who live in America, not just the 74 million who voted for him, or in Biden's case, 80 million, 80.3 million. And I know, I get it. A lot of people say, well, we've seen the rallies. How could we lose with so many people showing up? And I get that. But the problem is that rallies are a very Trump thing, and you have to remember that rallies are your base. Those are people who are showing up who want to feel that energy with that candidate. The Biden campaign very clearly said, we're not going to do that because we don't want you to get infected. We want to make sure that you stay healthy during a time of COVID. And there were a lot of people who said, you know what, that's a very good point. Thank you for thinking of me and thinking for my family. I know for a fact that right now I'm going a little stir crazy because I wasn't able to take Laura up and visit my family for Thanksgiving. We're not going to see them for Christmas. We're basically on our own for until next year, and it sucks during the holidays because you want to see your friends and your family, but you have to do what's right in order to keep your friends and family safe. Makes sense. Trump didn't do that, And people go, well, you can't prove that Biden got 80 million people. Trump is making so much money off of all these donations that are coming in because we know that it was stolen from him. Okay, let's look at the money for a second. This is actually a really good point. People talk about the fact that 74 million people voted for Donald Trump, the most any sitting president has ever received. You know what? Absolutely, he did. Biden got 80.3 million votes. And let's look at the pocketbooks going into the final days of the campaign. Donald J. Trump, with 74 million people backing him, was barely able to cover his own debts in order to finish his campaign. In fact, part of this re-election campaign, everything's a fraud propaganda thing, has actually in the text of the email says that a portion, anything under, I think it's $2,400, goes directly to him paying off his debts before you start paying for his legal fees. So right now, this $150 million is going to paying off money that he already owes people to finish his campaign. Now let's look at what happened with Biden. Biden with 80.3 million not only outrose Trump fiscally for months on end, it was by a large margin, to the point where at the end of the freaking campaign, he had money left over. Trump was asking for $150 million. I wouldn't be surprised if Biden still had a couple $100 million left over in the coffers after the fact. So that tells me, yeah, more people raised money, more money coming in. I mean, Trump did good, but Biden did better. Maybe by about 6.3 million. I don't know. But these are things that if you present them, they say, oh, you're ignorant of the facts. And that's the problem, is that you're not ignorant of the facts. You're absolutely not ignorant of this. You're willfully ignoring what's being presented to you. And that's a very Orwellian thing to have happen to you. You know, if you've ever seen or read 1984, one of the great quotes in that book is essentially the fact that they say that they will tell you to deny everything that is presented to you. They'll tell you to deny your friends, to deny your family, to deny your loved ones. And at the very end, when their power is almost complete, they'll tell you to deny what your eyes and your ears are telling you, to tell you to ignore and to deny what you see and what you hear. That's where we are. This is a president who, through his own ego, cannot accept defeat and is doing everything he can to invalidate the upcoming inauguration and presidency of his successor, because that's what it is. It's his successor. He doesn't get to go out on a high note. He doesn't get to go out on the winner who won twice and was able to do everything he possibly could. No, he went in, he was fought from the very beginning. And that's true. People, half the country, did not want him as president. And they were very active about making sure that he knew that they did not want him as president. So for him, this is retribution. And that should tell you everything you need to know about this president. Instead of trying to find a way to unify and to go out on a high note and to preserve as much steam as he possibly can for possibly rerunning in 4 years, what he's doing is he is tearing down the walls and the foundation of the very institution he wishes to try to lead again. And he's doing it because he feels like they never were fair to me. So why should I let them, walk off into the sunset? I got to make it hurt. I used to be like that, but I was like 10. When somebody did me bad, I would try to hurt them back for a long time. And then I grew up. And then I realized, you have to be an adult about certain things. Revenge is not the end all be all. Revenge and being petty is something that you grow out of, hopefully, as an adult. But yet this man doesn't do that. And he's engendering in his base the very worst of these aspects. I can't even, I can't even conceptually wrap my brain around that, because it means that he knows he lost. He knows he's not going to get it. He knows that he's taking the ship down with him, but he refuses to stop because, forgive the language, fuck you. That's why. That is a dangerous, dangerous, dangerous person. And that is not something that we should strive towards. And I want to be completely fair here. There are a lot of local and even some state level Republicans who are very much like, he lost, we're moving on, and every day he doesn't do it is getting worse. And there are a lot of people. I know a lot of conservative people. I live in the South. You don't live in the South and not know conservative people and know them well. Good, honest to God people. And they're like, look, he lost, I'm moving on. And that's what you should be doing. You should be like, okay, you lost, I'm moving on, and they're not allowing that to happen because they keep saying fraud, fraud, fraud. And one of the great lies is if you keep saying it over and over and over again, people will start to believe it. This man's been yelling fraud before the election. He yelled fraud during the election. He's yelling fraud after the election. At some point, we have to realize the fraud that he's talking about is him. He's the fraud. The fraud that he's bringing to you and saying, look at all this fraud, is him projecting his own inadequacies, his own doubts, and his own fears. And he wants you to pick them up and tell him he's a good boy. That's not a leader. Period. That's just not a leader. When your own hatchet men, when your own people who you have that have the power of the entire federal government behind them say, we can't find anything, that is telling. You tell me that A.G. Barr couldn't even come up with a little bit of a conspiracy? He came up with nothing, because anything he would produce would have to be vetted in court, and it would have to fall apart because it's not real. There's a reason why they're called conspiracy theories. They're theories, and they're conspiratorial. We know for a fact that it is difficult as hell for a conspiracy to go from point A to point Z without being found out because people talk. As soon as the election was over, people were already talking in the White House knowing that they lost. Before Trump even was able to conceptualize it, he knew. And they've been saying it. He's known the entire time, but he refuses to give up. The Republican Party knows that he's lost, but they refuse to give up. And they talk about it, but they won't go publicly on the record because they're afraid of the man. They're afraid of the people who he's been able to radicalize. And that's the difference, is that of those 74 million people, I would venture maybe 10% of them are truly radicalized. Like, let's say 7.4 million are truly radicalized. The other 60 something plus million people are like, yeah, we're out. You know, we voted for the man. He didn't get it. I'm cool. But it's that 7.4 million that scare you. You know, those are the ones who are on social media, plus the bots and all the other craziness that's going on. You know, those are the folks that make me a little nervous. You know, those are the folks who make me feel like we got to be careful about this stuff. But in the end, it's up to us to say we're not going to indulge in this. We're not going to indulge in letting these kind of conspiracies continue to grow in the soil of our democracy. And we're at a point right now where the next, I would say, month and a half, that's what's going to happen. We're going to have to continue to fight. And the thing that I'm very proud of is that they keep talking about the fact that they keep talking about the Trump voter. You know, how come Trump got 74 million votes? Flat out, the man is charismatic AF. Whether you love him or you hate him, the man is able to engender emotions from every single person on this planet. And we're not talking subtle emotions. We're talking explosive, large, big emotions. And either they're positive or they're negative. There's very little in the middle. There's a reason why there are very few undecideds in this in this past election, right? You know, they said the undecideds were like, I think it was like 6% or 5% were undecided, whereas in 2016 it was almost 20% of the vote, I think, was undecided. You know, that's what's happened, is that Trump has been able to shrink that undecidedness, you know, because people know who they like and who they don't like, and they're moving for or away from that candidate. Now, that's a pretty telling thing. But the problem is that this is a man who, when he went into office, he could have said, I want to get the best people around me. I want to find the best way of doing this, and I want to be the absolute best president I possibly can be. And if he'd approached it like that, I think he would have crushed it. But he didn't. He approached it as, this is the me show. I want to find the best way to be the best me as a president. I want to make sure it's always about me. And he continued to feed that monster. We're on the other side of this now. We're at the very end of it. We rejected that. We said, this is not who we want as a leader. And he can't stand it because it's not about him anymore. It's about us. It's about us. It's about our votes. And it's about the next person who's going to be president. And he can't stand it. He can't stand that the president show has been canceled. And that's what it is. The president show has been canceled. January 20th at 12:01 p.m., he is canceled. He's fired. He's whatever you want to call it. And that's the truth. Anybody who is telling you something else is selling you something. Notice I haven't put up a single banner at the bottom asking you to go check out our store or to go try to, get something from us, because I'm not saying this because I want you to follow us. I'm not saying this because I want you to spend money. I mean, it'd be great if you did, but that's not my goal here. My goal here is to try to talk to you with truth. And I hope that maybe you share it with a friend and they talk about it and they see it and they go, you know what? He's making a lot of sense. Because that's what we have to do. Everybody, and I mean everybody, especially if you're in America, you have got to be vocal about shutting this down. You've got to be vocal about saying, we will not accept this. This is not who we are as a people. This is not who we are as a species. And it's hard because, quite frankly, it's easy to be cynical in this world. It is absolutely easy to be cynical. To be hopeful, to be positive, to move towards optimism takes true strength and courage, especially when somebody is yelling in your face. And I think it's no small coincidence that today is the day that Rosa Parks was sitting on a freaking a seat on a bus, and they said, you have to move because a white man wants your seat. And she said, no. That took conviction, that took strength against an overwhelming majority of people who were going to hurt her if she did not. But she knew what the truth was. She knew what she was supposed to do. And she said, this is wrong and I'm not going to do it. And that's what we have to do right now. Collectively, all of us, we have to say, this man is wrong. This man is hurting our country and he has got to stop. I'm sorry, I have a comment. Sorry. Comment here. I was ranting. Probably it's the first time since Trump has been faced with eviction. Very true. Very, very true. It is very true that this is the first time that Trump has faced an eviction. And you know what? It may not be the last, because people have asked about things like, can you pardon somebody and be covered for all, crimes? Technically, yes, but there are some crimes that you can't get covered by, such as state crimes. They could come after you for. There's a lot of stuff. And the thing is, and this is really the kind of the bitch of it, a lot of people say, well, can't he preemptively pardon himself? Meaning, can't he just give himself a blanket pardon to cover everything in the future? No, he can't. This idea of preemptive pardons, which Rudy Giuliani supposedly brought up a couple days ago, doesn't exist. You can't pardon something if it hasn't happened yet. In fact, if you did that, you could be impeached. So if he says, I'm going to pardon you for the crimes that you're about to commit in court, that's technically an impeachable offense. And then they, as soon as you impeach somebody, that power to pardon evaporates. So there's this weird kind of idea that somehow Trump can give himself plenary powers of I'm going to pardon myself for all future crime. That's not how it's going to work. Basically, he can pardon himself for everything and anything up until the date of January 20th, 2021. And if he even steps his little pinky toe out of line after that, full force of whatever legal institution comes down on him can come down on him, period. And again, that's only on a federal level. There's still state stuff that can happen too. So it's a weird place to be. And a lot of people are saying, will we ever actually see Donald Trump convicted? Probably not. Chances are it probably won't happen. I see a lot of people who are saying that Biden should just go ahead and pardon Trump outright because it'll heal the world. It'll heal the nation. I don't know if I can actually get behind that. I believe that decisions have consequences, and consequences have the ability to affect people. And I'm a person, I've made mistakes and I've had to suffer those consequences. I've had to sit there and say, yep, I did that, and face whatever those consequences are and rebuild, on those things, and sometimes I was able to do it. Other times I'm not. So, we have a thing here. Dark Ages 9117 says, I have an interesting story to share with you. Please feel free to put it in the chat. Just remember to please be polite. One of the things we ask for people is to, of course, be respectful of one another. I absolutely welcome any comments. I'm more than happy to answer questions. I'm only going to be going for about another 30 minutes or so, and then we're going to be wrapping this up. So if anybody has a question specifically about a conspiracy theory or about something that they've heard or they've read recently, please feel free to ask. I have a lot of information that I've been gleaning lately. I'm more than happy to share with you if you have a question about that. And if you don't, that's okay too. What are you puppies doing? No, the puppies are being cute. So I'm more than happy to help that with you. I also have some names from Twitter if you'd like to follow some people. In fact, let me pull them up real quick. While I'm doing that, I'm going to get their names real quick right now for you. So that way, if you want to follow some people who I personally, these are some of them are liberal, some of them are conservative, but they're all pretty damn good. My favorite one is this guy called Greg Doucette. He's a conservative lawyer who is absolutely top of his game, really fantastic. I have 4 people here I'm going to share with you. So let me get their names copied in here. I'm just going to copy their Twitter handle so that way you guys can find them later. Give me a second. I'm going to make a quick banner here. I'll put it up at the bottom. So one moment, and then let's see here. All right, and then let me go ahead and and then let me grab, I got 2 more to grab real quick, so just bear with me here real quick, folks. And then I'll get to the questions because some folks are typing in questions and I see you, so just bear with me and I'll be happy to get to those questions in just a moment. So hang tight, almost there. Okay, so here we go. These are the cats that I would suggest that you check out. I'm going to go ahead and save that real quick. Come on, let me save it. All right, and I'm going to pull this up real quick so you guys can see that. Okay, so these are the 4 guys that I suggest following. The first character is Greg Doucette. This guy is a conservative North Carolina lawyer who specifically loves to talk about secession acts. He loves to talk about basically how certain things are going to happen. He's also made a really great 54-minute long YouTube video specifically talking about the Secession Act and the different ways that we could get to a Biden presidency and how there's no chance that there's ever going to be a Trump presidency. I absolutely encourage you to follow him. He is also the most conservative of these 4 people that are on here. And he is very vocal about being very anti-Trump. He's a conservative, but he's not big on Trump. Second one is a guy by the name of Quest Authority. This guy is really good at breaking down legalese. If you're looking at all these affidavits, if you're looking at all these motions that are being brought into court and you have no idea what they're saying, he breaks it down in layman's terms. He's really good at saying, this is what the judge is saying. This is what the plaintiff is saying. And he makes it in plain English so that way you know what's going on. Akiva M. Cohen is another person who does that. Him and Quest Authority go back and forth. Akiva is a little bit more liberal than Quest Authority, but they're really good at tag teaming. So if one person doesn't grab it, the other one will. And then the final one is Anthony Christ. Anthony Christ, I believe, is in Georgia. He is also a constitutional specialist. So he talks specifically about constitutional law. All 4 of these are extremely worth your time. If you want to check them out, I highly recommend them. They are pretty cool cats. And they also will answer questions. So if you have questions, toss them a tweet, and they usually will respond if they have the time. And they have these things called thread knots where they'll make 500 responses and they'll answer every single weird question and they'll break into it. And it's really, really good stuff. So if you want to follow somebody after we're done with this broadcast, those would be the cats I would say to follow on Twitter. Okay, so I'll put that back down and let's get over here to the questions here. Okay, so we have a question here. What is the thought on QAnon turning on Tucker Carlson? That's actually a really good point, Hallinan. I think the turn on Tucker Carlson shows us how divorced from reality the Trump supporters are. And again, when I say Trump supporters, I'm not talking about conservatives. I'm not talking about people who are Republican. I'm talking about people who absolutely live and breathe everything that Donald Trump says and does not question anything he asserts. If he says it, it is by law the truth. Those are what I refer to as Trump supporters. Trump supporters and in general, the Republicans have been big fans of Fox News because they give them the conservative platform they've always wanted. And one of the reasons why that's such a dangerous thing was that we used to have what is called the Truth in Media Clause. It was a federal law that basically said that you can't just make stuff up and put it on the air. You have to be able to have a certain level of journalistic quality and a journalistic integrity in order to make an assertion, especially if you use the news moniker. So what happened was that was basically repealed in the 80s, and Fox News showed up right in the early 90s right after that. And ever since then, it's been a downhill battle because what's happened is that the claims have gotten more and more and more extreme because they realize that people are hungry for that. They want to feel like they're the underdog, that they're battling the giant oppressive nation, and they want to show that they're better than that. And it is a very, very dangerous thing to do. And the problem with that has been the same problem with McCarthyism. If you continue to feed the dog that is feral, eventually that dog will turn on you. And I don't even like using the dog, the feral turn. It's basically, you can't keep feeding the monster and not expecting it to bite you, right? It's the thing that says, well, we can control this and we can find a way to do it. But sometimes there are things that are just uncontrollable, like, trying to have a pet great white shark. Eventually your hand's going to be in the water too long. It's just going to rip it off. And that's what happened with Tucker Carlson, is that Tucker Carlson made extreme claims for months, and then was finally had a moment where it's like, these claims amounted to nothing. There's nothing in the legal world that is supporting what they're saying on social media. Everything that they're presenting is not there. Where's this evidence? Under law, this is actually something that everybody needs to understand. People keep saying, we're waiting for the Supreme Court. Here's the thing. You can only argue in the Supreme Court evidence you've already brought into fact, meaning that you have to introduce it earlier. Okay? You don't sit there and basically play like a D student until you get to the hardest freaking test of the year and then try to pull out all your guns. You got to basically consistently provide and show everything that you're doing, especially when it comes to law. If you want to be taken seriously on the Supreme Court level, you got to have guns, son, meaning that all these lawsuits that they're trying to kick up, They're not going to do anything. And that's what Tucker Carlson called her on. He was like, there is nothing here. You brought no evidence. There's nothing here. And as soon as he said that, we saw exactly what happened. The Trump supporters, the people who do not want to hear the truth, the people who call news fake media because they are so convinced that anything that goes against their guy is automatically biased. They said Tucker Carlson is fake news, period. There was no rational thought. A guy that the night before, they're like, Tucker Carlson's the shit. Nope, Tucker Carlson is fake news. Tucker Carlson is a traitor. Tucker Carlson deserves to be dragged in the street. Now, part of me says that's karma. But part of me says that's the problem. Tucker Carlson and Fox News feed the shark, and eventually the shark is going to bite you. And that's what's happening. Hell, a couple weeks ago, the surviving Koch brothers, who basically have been funding for the last 25 years the conservative movement to become more conservative, realized, oh shit, I've really messed this up. I never thought it would get this bad. And is trying to actively find a way to bring people back to bipartisanism, to being bipartisan. And he's having a hard time doing it now because people are radicalized. They believe that the other side is evil. They're not evil. All right? The people who believe that they're doing good work, the people who are saying Donald Trump lost, let's move on from that. And I'm using this as an example. I'm not saying that this is the only example, but the Republicans who are saying Donald Trump lost, we got to move on. Those are legitimately decent human beings. Those are legitimately decent Republicans, you know? And there are a lot of them out there who are not saying it. Doesn't mean they don't believe it. It just means that they're not saying it because they're afraid of what'll happen if the shark bites their arm. You got to remember that, right? You know, remember back in Jaws, Sheriff Brody's throwing the chum in the water, right? I mean, that shark was this close to biting his damn arm off when he was chumming the damn waters. That is a scary freaking place to be. That's where conservatives are at right now, especially conservatives who know the truth. They want to get away from that. And they realize that they fought too hard to say, no, it's us or nothing. If you say it's us or nothing too much, eventually you're going to be on the other side of that. If you don't believe me, look what happened in Germany. You know, if you don't believe me, look what's happened so many times before. That's why in America, again, due process. You are innocent until proven guilty. If you believe there is something there, you, as the accuser, have to bring the evidence, legal evidence that can be proven and verified and can hold up to scrutiny. They haven't. Tucker Carlson called him on it. Now he's the enemy. If you're a conservative and you're hearing me right now and you thought that's a bad take for them, you're right, it is. It's absolutely the wrong take. And it is 150% the wrong way to be doing things. And that's where we are. And in order for us to get out of that, we have to take that hit. We have to say, you're absolutely right. We can't be like this anymore. We have to take the hit, whatever it may be, and we have to get away from this. Donald Trump was something that I knew was going to hurt the nation when this happened 4 years ago. I wish my friend Christina was here because she could say it. Laura's in the other room. She could come out and say it. But I said, this will be the thing that teaches us that demagoguery is one step too far. We forgot the lessons of McCarthy. Trump is a modern McCarthyism. We got through that. We'll get through this. It's going to get worse before it gets better. You know, we're going to experience some bad shit, but we're going to get through it. And if the GOP is not careful, they're going to kill that party. And I think, to a degree, they deserve it. The GOP is almost now exclusively the party of propaganda. They're not dealing in truth. They're dealing in trying to convince people that the sky is falling. And at a certain point, people are going to look up and say, it's just fine. That said, we have a story here from Dark Sage 9117. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and I'm going to read this out. I'm not going to pull it up on screen because it's really long, but it's in the comments here. So it says, I have been, and again, I'm just going to read the comment here, then I'll come back to that. So I'm going to read the whole thing. I have been an outspoken critic at times of President Trump, Hillary Clinton, and Joe Biden. At times, I've agreed with them on certain issues as well. However, as an independent, I am very disturbed at how I was treated these last 4 years. Trump supporters, Clinton supporters, and Biden supporters have attacked me relentlessly because I offered valid criticisms of all three candidates. For the record, I respect everyone who backs a candidate regardless of what you do. I feel all three are not good for America overall. And while they have some good ideas, I feel like they are very toxic people. I have been called everything from a Nazi, racist, sexist, bigot, to even being un-American, a white supremacist, and many other vile names. It is very disturbing to me how someone who tried to be fair, reasonable in their criticism of someone was attacked and vilified by all three sides. I worry about Joe Biden's message of unity when for 4 years I was not given a chance. I was attacked relentlessly by everyone because I did not back their candidate. If Democrats want unity in my situation as an independent, how should they go about trying to reach out to me when I was vilified and attacked? Well, first off, Dark Sage, I'm sorry that happened to you. I don't know if you follow us or if you've been on my broadcast before, but Laura and I, my wife and I, we consider ourselves to be moderates. We technically are left-leaning, but we are basically moderate independents. And we tell people this story all the time because this is a factual thing that happened. In the span of 1 week, I was called a flaming liberal and a racist conservative basically in the span of like 5 days. And it had nothing to do with racism at all. It was just, that was the thing they went to immediately. But because we live here in the South, we are considered to be extremely liberal here in the South, but we're not. We're very moderate. We're very much, let's hear both candidates. Let's figure this out. Let's try to find the balance between both things, because I personally believe that the people on the far left, they're going too far left. And the reason why is because they just like the right, don't want to hear anybody else. They don't want to compromise. People on the right are very intolerant as well, and they don't want to compromise. So I find that if you go too far in either direction, no good. So I find walking in the middle, listening to both sides, is the best way of coming up with an informed, educated opinion. Seems to be pretty common, right? Like that seems to be the thing you'd want to do. Apparently, down here in the South, that makes me a flaming liberal. So I was like, fine, well, that sucked. Laura and I, we got into our car, we drove up north. And we were going to go do a show. We were going to a comic convention, and we had some friends up there who are extremely northern, who are extremely liberal, and whom we love to death. We love these people to death. And we were having a conversation about something, and I mentioned, again, a more moderate approach to something, and they said, wow, you're just a racist conservative. And I'm like, how? How am I remotely, I'm not calling for people to lose. I could not even fathom how they got to first racist and then to conservative. And what I realized is that we live in these spectrums, these echo chambers. And if we don't allow ourselves to step out of them, it is very difficult for us to find traction with those folks. Because in general, if you're only listening to people on the right or you're only listening to people on the left, when you step out of that bubble, it feels like you're being attacked from all sides. And that's a very, 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 very mentally damaging place to be. So yeah, it feels like you're being beat up on. And just like you said right now, as a moderate, you feel like you're being beaten up on both sides, right? You know, the Trump people are coming at you and they're smacking you around. The people who are supporting Hillary, oh, maybe you didn't vote for their candidate, you're getting slapped around. I will tell you this right now. I am not a person who will automatically flame you because you voted for Trump. I'm not going to be a person who flames you because you voted for Hillary Clinton, or in this case, Joe Biden. All right. Now, personally, this time around, I've made it very clear, not a fan of Trump, voted for Biden. I did the same thing in 2016. I felt Trump was a very dangerous person. I voted for Hillary Clinton. And I agree, Hillary Clinton wasn't a great candidate, but she was a better candidate than a demagogue. The country didn't agree with me. I had to accept that. Okay, fine. So we come around to this one. And the thing I've appreciated about Biden is, while I don't agree with you about the fact that, like, I agree with you that Clinton has her problems. I agree with you that Trump has his problems. Biden, for me, is the least problematic of all the candidates that we've had since Obama has been running. So, and even people will still say Obama was problematic as well. But for me, Biden is he's pretty benign when it comes to that. And the reason why is he really is a moderate. He's running under Democratic ticket, but he really is much more middle of the road than people give him credit for. And I think the fact that he's trying to get people from the left and the right to start to work together is a huge sign of where he's going to go. Now, does that translate to him being able to win you over personally? I don't know. Quite frankly, I think that this is a Rubik's Cube that's going to take decades to unfold. I think this is a puzzle that will take time for people to finally understand what we're looking at. And what I think we're looking at right now, personally, is I think we're seeing the death of the radical right. And I don't say that because I think the radical right is evil. I think radical anything is evil. But I think the radical right, the right that says that they are divined by God and that theirs is the only path, is starting to truly wane. And I think there's a much more moderate conservative that will come out of this. Now, this party might break apart. They may not be the GOP, or if they do, it might be a conservative GOP, and then there might actually be a Trump party. There is a decent chance that there is a extreme right Trump party that comes out of this. Whether or not they actually, go anywhere with it, who knows? But it could be like a new Green Party. And I look at the left, and I think we're coming into an age of left extremism. And I don't mean that in that they're going to burn down buildings, or they're going to, or they're going to, push, crazy religious ideologies or whatnot. I think what I see for radical leftism is they're really going to take on the idea that we shouldn't support corporations as much. We shouldn't punish people for just being poor, things like that. And even though they call that a radical agenda, I don't see that as being as radical as, people proclaiming things about God. Because again, one of the tenets of our country is that your religion is your religion, and my religion is my religion, and these two things don't meet. That's a cornerstone of the GOP right now for like the last 40 years. Whereas the Democrat side, the radical left, is much more about, kind of like they want to be much more socialistic. And people hate that word socialism. I think that basically the pendulum's swinging in the direction. I think that it has swung so far to the right, it's going to swing through centrism, and it's going to swing over into the leftism. I don't necessarily see that as a bad thing right now, because we need to check some of that extreme right with some extreme leftism. And I hope that eventually the pendulum kind of moves back towards the center. People talk about AOC being a scary person. I don't see her as being scary. Right now, she's saying some really good truth. She's saying some truth that's unfortunately very badly packaged. I think that there are a lot of things that are happening in the world that they are correctly addressing. But I think that one thing the right figured out 40 years ago and the left is still trying to figure out is the right is really good at branding, right? Like if you're like let's look at abortion. Abortion is like one of the big issues that the left and the right never agree on, right? The right figured out that they're not anti-abortion. They're pro-life. So now they have changed anti-abortion into being pro-life. So as a left, you're like, well, we can't be pro-abortion versus pro-life. That just won't make any sense. So we're going to be pro-choice. Okay, those kind of worked out, but pro-life sounds more positive, right? When the GOP, specifically Trump, saw that people who were anti-fascist were really rising up against them, they said, we have to brand them as something. They're going to be Antifa. They made up Antifa. And then basically, the left said, yes, we are Antifa. There's no Antifa. It's just it's a philosophy. It's like Marxism. It's not an organized, there's no dues paying membership like the NRA or something. So it's Antifa, this mystical Antifa that's always around, right? Again, good at branding. Even their enemies, they're good at branding them. But then you look at what's happening over with, the left. The left want to defund the police. Now, on its face, defund the police sounds like let's take all the money away from the police and let anarchy reign. That's what it sounds like when you say defund the police. What they're really saying is, let's take some of this large police budget and let's put it into social systems that will take the pressure off of the police from being a handyman tool that can do everything. The police should only have to do certain things, but we should also have other people that can help. So that way they don't have to be social workers. They don't have to be healthcare providers. They don't have to do X, Y, and Z. They can only enforce the law and take away some of their stress. Let's also take some of that money and make sure they have radical, massive, expensive, top-notch healthcare, so that way they can be mentally evaluated, maybe on a quarterly or biannual basis. Make sure that if they are suffering from mental PTSD, they can go and get the help they need, so they can go back out onto the streets, and make sure that they are the best that they possibly can be, so that way our citizenry is more safe. That is a big paragraph I just said. That's crunched down into defund the police. They need a better slogan. They just do. So when I look at this, I'm kind of like, but that's like their radical agenda. Let's make cops more fair. Let's find a way to make things better for people. Let's find a way to, support our institutional norms and to make sure that people have what they need as a society. Those are all great things, but they frame it in these weird phrases that people hear and it scares the shit out of them, Black Lives Matter, great example, right? Black Lives Matter. Who can't agree? If you're a black person, absolutely your life is as valuable as anybody else's life, right? He's like, absolutely, no black person should ever have to worry about their life being snuffed out just because they're walking down the street. No one, I think, with a decent human heart would ever say that's a bad statement to make, right? Absolutely. But they left the door wide open for somebody to counterpoint it because you're focusing only on black lives, right? So then you have these assholes who come in and say, well, you know, all lives matter, which dilutes the message. It's bad branding. Doesn't mean that it's not 150% true. Black lives absolutely matter. Black lives are absolutely being pushed on more, and black lives absolutely should be given more consideration because of the fact of how poorly the police are treating them. What it comes down to is that we need to be better at recognizing the struggles of black people. Doesn't mean that we ignore the struggle of everybody else as a result. It just means that we need to consciously go, yeah, you know what, there's something fucked up there. We need to work on that. Who can argue with that? You know? But that's the problem, is that we turn them into slogans, and the slogans are messy, and they're not accurate, and they're not great at conveying the heart of the emotion. And I don't have a better slogan. I'm not good at coming up with them. I don't know. But what I'm saying is that the GOP, they're really good at it, you know? And then they're really good at muddying the message. Oh, well, blue lives matter. You know, cops' lives matter. Of course they do. Nobody's saying cops' lives don't matter. We're not saying it's either or. We're not saying it's a binary choice, you know? But that's where we are. That's where we're at. And that's the thing that's frustrating me, because we keep boiling these down into these stupid terms and we don't communicate. You know, I think Dark Sage brought up some really interesting points about the fact that how is somebody supposed to reach me, an independent? How is somebody supposed to reach me because I feel attacked from both sides? It's a good point. And what they need to do, and we have to wait to see if Biden's going to do it, is if they continue to try to do bipartisan efforts. If 6 months from now he starts saying that the Republicans are just trying to screw everything and they're not giving anybody a chance, and they don't find a way to actually make progress, that's not going to be a good look. But the thing that people forget about Biden is he actually has a lot of friends in the GOP, a lot of them. He's actually a really good friend with Mitch McConnell. I personally believe that while Biden may not be the leftist super guru that people would want, like say maybe Bernie Sanders, I do believe that he can start to move the nation forward and start to progress certain agendas that the left can embrace and the right can tolerate. It might mean giving some things up. It might mean waiting on others. But I think if he does it right, I think there's a really good opportunity to show that he is bipartisan. It's one of the reasons why I'm kind of iffy on the fact that I don't know if I want both Georgia Senate seats to go for the Democrats. If they do, you have you know, the hat trick, all three houses, you know, presidency, Congress, and Senate, to be able to do what they want to do without checks. I kind of think that if you had maybe one blue seat, let's say Warnock wins and Purdue wins, so you get one extra Republican, you get one extra Democrat, that requires them to actually reach across the aisle. But I don't like that either. I don't like the fact that, you know, we have what is called a simple majority in the Senate, meaning that all you need is half the vote and then you're VP and you're done. I really liked it more when the Senate was a 60% vote, meaning that you had to have 60 votes on your side in order to pass legislation. I wish we were more close to that again. I think that if the Senate was smart, they'd pass that resolution. They'd get it put back in, because I think a 60% majority is the way to go for a lot of these laws, because we've started to see the crumbling of some of our institutions because of this 50 vote rule. And I really think that we need to get back to that 60 votes. That's just me, though. I think that's really a much better way of doing it, because that forces people to be bipartisan. You can't just stick your head in the ground and say, we're not going to move. You have to work with other people. And as soon as you make that happen, boom, you start to make motion. Right now, we're at a point where you could just wait it out, hope you can pick up a couple seats, and then boom, you have a supermajority for 2 years and do whatever the hell you want to. That's what happened in the first 2 years of Trump. And then the House flipped back blue. So now there's not a supermajority. Things are less chaotic if the Senate gets back up to that 60% vote. So, but I hope that answers your question. I know I kind of went in the weeds there a little bit, but I hope that kind of helped there. Oh, I do have a little thing here. Yes, the radical left. How evil of them to counter Nazis and offer free shit to everybody. Yes, absolutely. I mean, there is a percentage of that I absolutely agree. And I don't consider that to be, hey, Ghidorah, how you doing? But as M. Lotus said here, I don't consider that to be the radical left agenda. I just consider that to be the left agenda. The radical left agenda is the same agenda that I see on the radical right, which is we must destroy the opposition. You know, they are our enemies and they must pay. That is a scary place. And those are the kind of folks who, you know, those are the kind of folks in the 60s and whatnot that would blow up, you know, research laboratories, and they would blow up, you know, buildings and institutions because they thought that they were taking down the establishment. That's the radical left for me. Now, people have different variations, and of course, you're completely within your rights to view them as different. But that's for me. Just like I view the radical right as the people who are like, we should drag, like Laura and I, we saw on Parler. We don't go to Parler, but we have people who check it out. And they posted that this one guy was like, we should drag, if everybody dragged 2 liberals out in the street and shot them, we could basically have peace in our nation tomorrow. That's the radical right. Not the people who want to sit down and find what unites us, but would rather drag you out into the street and shoot you, because it's easier to just execute you than to learn how to communicate with you. Those are the scary folks. And they're on both sides. They really are. But the right tends to be a little more vocal about it right now. Go back 30, 40 years, the left was really vocal about it. It swings. It's a pendulum. So that's just where we are right now. Let me see here. By the way, thank you for following Dark Sage. Normally, we don't do political stuff. Normally, we talk about art and geeky things, but this was something that has been brewing in my head, and we did a bunch of political stuff right after the election, and I was like, let's do a 1 month later kind of thing. But let's see here. The issue, Biden is trying not to make left, center, or right of his party mad. I'm sure Sanders' wing of the party will get mad if he does pass more left-wing policies, and I imagine centrists will get mad if Biden does not pass more center items. That's politics. No matter what, once you're in office, you have to make decisions and you have to try to move forward as a leader. And you have to decide what do you think is going to be the best for you and what's going to be the best for the country. The thing that I like about Biden is he's basically all but said he's going to be a one-term president. He doesn't want to run in 2024. He wants to be the person who was able to stalwart us out of a very tumultuous Trump administration, calm the country down, and to move towards things being calm. And then hopefully his successor, we assume it'd be maybe Kamala Harris or somebody else in the Democratic Party, would then take over and continue on in his stead. Biden has very little to lose if he's only going to be a one-term president, which means that he can pursue his agenda without fear of retribution. Now, from everything I'm seeing and reading, he's trying to find a way to bring the left and the right together, which means he's probably going to pursue centrist policies, which is going to piss off the more left-leaning side of his party, period. That's just how that's going to happen. And I think that's why people wanted Bernie to be the nominee, because they felt that Biden was too much of a centrist. So the people who are already pissed off are just going to stay pissed off. So I don't see how that's a losing proposition for him. So in the end, him going with a centrist, trying to pull the country back together, trying to curry favor with some of the Republicans and finding a way to move forward together as a country that give the left and the right something, I think is the smart move. And I think he's the right choice. I think he was the absolute right choice for the Democrats. And I think he was the best choice versus a more polarizing, further and further right-leaning by Donald Trump. Not everybody's going to agree with me on that. And I know a lot of my friends don't agree with me on that, but I feel like that was the right move at the time. And we'll see. I mean, the next 4 years could be a whole bunch of nothing. We could turn out to see the next 4 years that, historically speaking, if you don't have people that are willing to work with you in Senate and in the House of Representatives, you're not going to get a lot done. So let's say the Republicans are able to keep a majority for the Senate race, and they're able to freeze him out over the next 2 years. Traditionally speaking, midterms for a new president is bad for them because people then judge them on how much or how little that they have done. So if he's not able to get anything done in the next 2 years, then people are going to then punish him by making a more Republican majority inside of the House of Representatives. So let's say he's also not able to pick up any seats inside the Senate. Now he has a combative red House and a red Senate against him. It could go that way. We don't know. Some people say that that's a reason why he should go more left. There's no one answer here. You have to go with your gut. And my gut says that he's going to try to find a way to be as bipartisan as possible. And my gut this is just me right now, and I fully disclaim that I could be wrong as hell on this, is that he's going to move towards trying to bring the country together by trying to come up with ideas that will satiate, maybe not the same policy, maybe, you know, he'll give one to the left and then he'll give one to the right and so on and so forth. But he's going to try to find a way to weave that needle and hopefully say, support us and give us more because we can do more at the midterms. Because this is actually pretty interesting math. In the battleground states, in the battleground areas that flip fairly easily, there's a bunch of races that are coming up in 2022 in the Senate. The Senate could easily go blue in 2022. And if they're able to hold on to the House, which again, not very likely, but it's possible. I mean, he could wind up with again his supermajority in 2022. Who knows? We have to wait and see. So that's about all I can say about that. Okay, we have another question here. I have for you. I'm not sure how well you are versed in geography. With the South becoming more Democratic, which Northeast state do you see going more Republican first? Rhode Island, Connecticut, Massachusetts, Maine, New York, or New Jersey? Yeah. As soon as I said Maine out loud, I was like, Maine. Maine's the one I would put first. Maine is. Yeah, Maine or Jersey. Maine or New Jersey would be the ones I would say. I would also say that people need to take Florida off as a battleground state. I think that Florida can go blue. I think it has gone blue in the past, but I think Florida is becoming much more of a red stronghold. And I think you also have to look at places like Ohio and start to see them as much more of a long shot. I think personally, what we're seeing right now is, I don't necessarily think that Maine's going to flip anytime soon. What I do see is that education is the magic bullet right now against the Republicans. The Republicans have, and this is, I hate saying it like this, because the Republicans, if you look at how the last 60 years have gone as far as education and party, if you go back 60 years, overwhelmingly, the education party, the party of the educated, was the Republican Party by like 80%. Now, 60 years later, the education party is the Democratic Party. And what we're seeing is that less and less people are following Republican ideals that are in educated areas. And educated areas normally are going to be high volume areas, meaning cities, places with lots of infrastructure, and suburbs. And the trick is that a lot of cities that used to be just midtown cities are becoming huge. Look at Atlanta. Atlanta in the last 50 years has grown from being a fairly decent sized Georgia city to being a massive conglomerate of a city that is like just, I mean, you saw the suburbs of Atlanta, right? If you look at the map of Georgia, the suburbs of Atlanta are like 7 freaking counties. It's a huge freaking blue blob right in the middle of red Georgia. It's a bullseye. And it's massive. Savannah is another good example, right on the coast. It's the blue is slowly moving in. And that's the problem, is that more and more and more, because Republicans are not bringing ideologies and bringing education to the forefront, they're having to rely more and more on rural, hardworking, blue-collar folks. Not to say that there's anything wrong with that, but it just means to say that the educated vote, the people who go to college, the people who work in the suburbs, the people who have the educated vote are becoming more and more spread out over the country. And that's starting to limit where the GOP can go. So one of the things we were looking at Arizona, and people were saying, how can this one county in Arizona decide the entire election? And somebody said, do you see all that red in Arizona? Yeah, that's all dirt. There's nobody living there. It's desert. There's nobody that's there of any substantial amount. And it's true. That's exactly what it is there's nobody living in those parts of the damn state because there's nothing there. It's just open land, you know? So in the open land areas, yeah, you're going to pull a lot more of the red vote right now because they're not finding a way to curry the educated vote. And that's a failing on the GOP's part. In that same breath, I very much hate that Democrats do not reach out to people in rural areas more. It's this weird idea that if you're a Democrat, you cannot speak to the person with a blue collar who works in the fields, who works on farms. And I feel that's a failing on their part. There is no reason why you can't go out and talk to somebody and say, I can find a way to communicate and engender goodwill with you. They don't try. And it's bullshit. I talk to people all the time who are very rural, very awesome folks, and I love them to death. One of the reasons I love living in the South is because I've met people who are extremely well educated, who are very much not educated, who are very rural, who are very cosmopolitan, all over the place. And they're all rational, good human beings that just want to be taken seriously and heard. And all they want to know is, one, are you going to be able to make sure they have a job? Two, are we going to be able to make sure my family is fed? And three, are you going to keep us safe? There is no reason why a Democrat cannot answer those questions and tell them what they need to hear without betraying their core values. Same thing with the Republicans. There's no reason why the Republicans can't come up with a nice platform that says, hey, we are rational people. We can move more towards the center. We're still going to be right on some things, such as maybe abortion. We're still going to be, we're still going to be more pro-life than not. But, at the same time, maybe pro-life also needs to include more social systems. So that way people make sure that once that baby's born, they're not going to go into a horrible system of foster care and then eventually wind up in the prison system. They literally call that right now, they call it literally from birth to prison. I mean, like, you're literally born into a system that will eventually make you wind up in jail. How shitty is that? They can rebuild their party on being far more compassionate. And the Democrats can reach out of their education base. This is a problem that both sides need to come to terms with. And whoever figures it out and cracks that nut, they're going to win more. And I think what we're seeing when we're looking at people like Stacey Abrams, who are, if you don't know, she ran for governor 2 years back and lost. But she was the Democratic nominee for Georgia. And she almost got it. She very closely almost got it, but lost. And then she spent the next 2 years basically figuring out a way to reach out to the suburbs, to reach out to the rural areas, to energize the city base, and to make sure that people were able to be heard in the South. And it worked. Georgia flipped blue. That's what's going to happen. If people follow the Stacey Abrams model, it's going to change, because Stacey Abrams and her associates were able to go out and to talk to people and to reach people and to convince them, hey, just because they're blue doesn't mean that they're not somebody that you can relate to. That is huge. So that's a pretty big thing. Okay, so let's see here. Because regions shift over time, the South at one point was a Democratic stronghold. Places like California were solid red states. There was a time when the Northeast was a Republican stronghold as well, and now it's a slot for the Democrats. Take Vermont, for example. It voted Democrat for the first time in '64. Arkansas voted for the first time in decades in '64 as an example of states that have shifted from blue to red and red to blue. That's true. But you also have to remember that basically in the 40s, was it the 40s? I believe it was the 40s. In the 40s, Republicans were essentially Democrats and Democrats were essentially Republicans. They flipped in the early mid part of the 20th century. That's something that people like to forget about, is that Republicans used to basically be the Democrats. When we think of the Republican Party in the 19th century, like the party of Lincoln, as we call them, they were Democratic. As we see them today, they were the liberals. And the Democrats of that time were the conservatives, and they flipped. And the big flip, the worst flip was, I don't want to say worst, but the thing that changed and kind of cemented Democrats are blue and AKA liberal, and Republicans are red, AKA conservatives, was basically the Civil Rights Act that LBJ passed in '64, right? It was either 64 or 65. Don't hold me exactly to that date. I want to say it was 64. But on that day, when he signed that, he basically knew that he signed the South away to the Conservative Party for 50 years. And almost like clockwork. Say what? Yeah, Strom Thurmond was considered a Dixiecrat. He was a Southern Democrat, and he became a Republican because of the Civil Rights Act that was passed in the 60s. LBJ put the needs of the many above his own party, and he crushed his party's chance of ever having a foothold in the South for basically 2 generations. And what happened was that eventually, people, like, the suburbs have continued to grow. People have become more educated. People have become more open-minded. It's changed. It's radically changed since then. And now we're at a point where the South is open again. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that, people just, they continue to work things out. They continue to move towards being, equal and moving away from their hate. It takes time, and that's where we are right now. I personally believe that without radically changing their messaging, within a decade, we're going to see the GOP collapse on itself. And I don't say that to be dire and catastrophic. I say that because of the fact that the message that the GOP continues to preach is getting narrower and narrower and narrower. And without somebody like Donald Trump to radicalize people, to get them so insanely just foaming at the mouth, excited over one candidate, they're going to start losing their power. Because really look at what they're talking about right now. They're talking about less rights for people to vote. They're talking about less rights for women. They're talking about stopping the rights for people who are gay, lesbian, transgender, whomever. They're talking about, you know, all these little things that are basically code for not white, not rich, not us. And that's a very dangerous game to play, because we are more culturally diverse, more ethnically diverse, and more diverse as a people than we have ever been to this point. And it's going to continue that way. And unless the GOP finds a way to fix that messaging, these subtle signals that they send out are going to continue to alienate more and more and more. But that's not a bad thing, because that means that they'll have to change who they are, and they'll have to let go of some of these old ideas that they've held on to for far too long. So yeah, if they have to go through getting the crap kicked out of them for, you know, a decade, okay, you know, let's make it happen. But I still believe that America is moving forward in the right direction. I believe that this pain that we're going through will lead to a better version of our country. And if it doesn't, the pain that we go through after that will lead to a better version. I believe that we're always moving forward. And as long as we're trying to better ourselves, we're going to get there. It's the day that we say that we no longer have days in front of us that will be brighter than the days that are behind us is when we lose. It's kind of that idea of, as long as you're learning, as long as you're moving, as long as you're challenging yourself, you're never really dying. But the day that you say, I don't have anything left to live for, is the day that you're kind of done, right? So that's the same thing here. You know, as long as our country continues to try to move forward, tries to be positive, tries to find a way to bring people together versus tearing each other apart, I think we're going to be okay. And I know that's not a popular opinion, but again, I'm an optimist, and that's not an easy thing to be these days. And we're going to have to wrap up here. I've actually gone over my time limit. I'm right at 6:30. So let's see here. I do agree with what you said about Democrats or Republicans reaching out to people and coming together with a platform of keeping people safe, helping put food on the table, and looking out for their citizens as a nation. But it seems like a lot of the politics today are very divided, and nobody wants to do that. Absolutely. I'll talk about that in a second. Those are very reasonable things to want to run on. And personally, I would vote for a candidate who offered me those things, no matter if they were in a rural area or in a big city. Absolutely. Again, I think that those are very reasonable things. The issue that we have right now as a country is that it's become very politically expedient to just simply say, we refuse to do anything with the other side until we have a majority. And until we have a majority, look at how bad they're doing. And the hope is you're going to, and it's this weird swinging effect, right? It happened basically at the end of George W. Bush's term, right? George W. Bush started with a very strong Senate and House. It then swung away from him. And then basically by the time we got to Obama, Obama was able to then have a huge supermajority and was able to bring it in and do a lot of cool stuff. And people said, wow, he really went for it. And they were a little afraid by that. So they pulled back, right? So then the Senate went red. And then, of course, the House went red. And so then basically Obama was fighting for 6 years to try to get anything passed, because they said, we're not going to work with you. We're going to wait for our candidate. So then Trump comes into play. 2 years after that, boom, they lose the House, because people are like, wow, this is really getting dangerous. And what we're seeing is that people do not like it when our government doesn't work. And what I think we're about to see, I think what the Biden presidency will reveal, please let this happen, is I think the Republicans and Democrats are going to see, if we actually make motion and we work together, we can both win. We can both find a way to move our agenda forward. This idea of all or nothing doesn't really help us. We just stagnate. So I think they've realized that they cannot stagnate. This idea of going for all of it doesn't work, but they can have true moral victories for their party and move forward and not be seen as somebody capitulating to the other side. Because again, they are not the enemy. They're the opposition. There's a difference, okay? We're all Americans. We just have different opinions on how to get there. But just because somebody wants to maybe increase taxes doesn't mean that they want to hurt you, and vice versa. You know, the only time where you have to sit there and question somebody and whether they want to hurt you is if they're trying to pass a law that says you can't be gay. You know, if you're gay, well, that's a crime. You're going to go to jail. That's bad. You know, and I know that's the fear. We're always afraid of the super catastrophic versions of these ideas, right? I get that, you know, but in general, we have to look at it from a point of view of, well, let's see what's really happening. And in general, it's not that. It's normally pretty benign stuff. But sometimes it's not. And I think Donald Trump really showed us that, yeah, you can say a lot of stuff and it's really kind of sketchy, and it's like, ugh, you say build a wall. Wow, a wall's fine, right? Increases our security. What are we really saying? We don't want people anymore. We want to close ourselves off from the world. That doesn't work. All right. The world is getting closer and closer together. We can't put up a wall because a wall simply deprives us of resources and opportunities, and we hurt ourselves. So that actually works against us. We're literally a nation founded on immigrants. And we're also a nation founded on the idea that even though we don't have it right now, we can always become better. It's why I can proudly sit here and say that I'm an American, but I see that we have fallen. Doesn't mean that I don't want us to be better. It just means that right now we're not getting it done right, but we can be better. You can love a country that used to put people into bondage and used to tell people that they couldn't drink from the same water fountain, because eventually we go, you know what? We can be better. We can do better. And we do better. And we continue to strive towards being better. That's the difference. We don't have to look at our past and say it was always great. We can look at the past and say we're still trying. You know what? A perfect example is I had a conversation with somebody. They protested during the 60s. They absolutely were right next, arm in arm with people walking, saying that equal rights absolutely matter. Women should have the, equal pay through the 60s and the 70s. They were absolutely 100%. This is right. And they felt that they did their job. They felt that they were heard and that they had a family and they went on with their life and everything's great. Now they see all of these marches and whatnot, and in their mind, they're like, we took care of this 60 years ago or 40 years ago. Why the hell are people marching for stuff that we marched for back then? And they're taking it as a personal affront against them, saying we didn't do the job. No, you did a good job. But the problem is that there's still more to go. And it's the next generation that has to do the work. It has nothing to do with the work. The work you did was great. You were awesome. It just didn't get us to the end game. So we keep going, we keep pushing, we keep trying to improve. We keep going and improving ourselves. That's what it means to be American. That's why I don't have a problem celebrating Thanksgiving. I know that Thanksgiving is a horrible atrocity of a freaking holiday about people that basically wiped out an indigenous species. Let's be fair here, all right? We're talking about people who came in, stole land, and kicked people off. And then when they said, oh, that land that we kicked you off to, we want that land too. We've treated Native Americans like shit. We all know that. They know that. We know that. We all know that. Now, I didn't do that personally. Native Americans absolutely have every single right to be pissed off. Laura is part Native American. She's like, yeah, she's like, absolutely. But the point is that when you actually sit down and look at what Thanksgiving is trying to be now in a modern setting, it is about families being thankful that they have each other. I don't look at the pilgrims. In fact, I hate pilgrim iconography. But to see my family, to give thanks to seeing my nieces and nephews and my brothers, my sisters and my brothers-in-laws and whatnot, yeah, that I'm all about. So we can look at the bad and still accept and still love a country. So that's what I like to talk about with people, is we can't be catastrophic all the time. We have to look at the whole thing. So sorry, I got on a rant there. Let's see here. We got something from Raziel, and then I'm going to have to wrap up here. We've been going for a while. Either Republicans will change or get replaced. It's happened before. I mean, the Democrats and Republicans were not always the controlling parties. Absolutely correct. I mean, Teddy tried to break it, and it didn't work, but a successful shift might actually work now. I agree. I think that if the GOP doesn't radically change their messaging, we're going to see a splintering of the GOP, and we're going to see like a new GOP, and then like some kind of Trump party, which is going to be what we're going to consider the radical right, and the GOP are going to be considered like the moderate right. But as soon as that happens and we break apart that super majority of the right, I think we'll see the same thing happen on the left. The left right now is unified against the right. But when you really look at it, the left is more or less the centrists, the slightly lefties, and then like the extreme lefties. And I mean, like they're going to break apart. And that's not a bad thing. That means that we went from 2 parties to potentially 5, 6 parties. That's good. It means that it's going to be much harder to get, up to, of course, the 270 votes during an election year. But that also means that we're going to have a lot more diversity in candidates. Libertarians might have a better bite at the apple. Who knows? But I believe that unless the Republicans find a way to become more moderate, and if they're able to keep everybody together, we're going to see some new parties. And I don't see that as a bad thing. Look over Britain. Look over most of the freaking democracies out there. There are dozens of parties. that's kind of the point. We want to try different things. That's what a democracy is supposed to be. The idea that you're either this or this is very unhealthy. I think that breaking this up into smaller kind of groups, I would love for there to be a moderate party. I would love there for to be a moderate party. Yeah, but that's me. That's how I see things. Whether it happens or not, who knows? We've rigged this game so much to favor Democrats and Republicans. Like, they have to have a serious splintering. But it could happen. And I think it will happen. I just don't know how fast it will occur. But, whew, okay. That's 2 hours. I'm at 6:39. I was supposed to stop at 6:30. I'm not too bad over on time. I hope this helped. We weren't planning on doing another one of these. I wasn't really planning on doing another political cast, but I've been getting a lot of questions. In fact, by the way, if you guys are watching this on VOD, on replay, I want you to know that we've got all your messages. We got a lot of messages from a lot of people. I almost said pooples. A lot of people out there who said that we inspired them to vote. We actually had somebody who said that they were not going to vote, and on our broadcast that we had, that they went out and they voted because they were so inspired by what we were talking about. They're like, I want to go vote. That's everything. I mean, honestly, like that's like the best compliment we could have gotten. And I'm so happy that we did have that kind of result. And I hope that me breaking down, the race as it was happening, a month ago, and me kind of talking about these conspiracy theories, the last 35, 40 minutes here haven't really been about conspiracy theories. We've just been kind of talking. But I hope that you're starting to see that it's not as crazy as you think it is, but there are people out there who are using their pulpits to absolutely drive the wrong messages. And if you are a conservative, and then right now, I really want to frame this at my conservative friends or my conservative viewers. If you are a conservative out there, I again want you to ask yourself the question, do I really believe the world is so skewed against me that the only people I can trust are the people who are moving further and further right? Or is there a chance, a real chance that maybe, just maybe, these other places are telling you the truth and it's just hard to hear? I want you to think about that. I want you to think about the fact that maybe the candidate that you've been backing isn't the best candidate. Maybe it's time to get away from Donald Trump, not only as a nation, but as a political party. This is a man who literally has been lying his entire adult life. The man has dealt in lies. The man has traded in lies. And the man has said lie after lie after lie the entire time. In fact, most Trump supporters absolutely say, yeah, he says bullshit all the time, but he talks like we do, so we like him. It's not a great leader. It's just not. So I hope you think about that. And I hope you really look at what's going on around you. People who are Republicans for life are being called rhinos, are being given death threats because they did their job correctly. Does that mean that all these news institutions, all these federal organizations, the Attorney General and the Department of Justice saying that there's no fraud, are they all lying to you and it's only Trump? And remember, these are people who support Trump. These are people who backed Trump. Are they all lying to you? Or is it one man and some lawyers who haven't dropped him yet? And remember, the lawyers who started this a month ago, they dropped him because his claims could not be proven in court. There's no legal evidence. There's no legal justifications. There's no legal anything. It's all conspiracy. That puts you on the same level as Roswell, Sasquatch, and the Loch Ness Monster. Is it possible that there was an alien that crashed there? Yeah. Is there possible there's a giant ape gorilla man somewhere in the redwoods? Sure. But the chances are probably not. We have to start to use our rational, critical thought and to really look at it and say, there's nothing here. If there was, they would have gotten more than one win out of 40 freaking lawsuits. There are 52 lawsuits in total. 40 of them have been decided on. Donald Trump has won one. Almost half of the other 39, they withdrew because they realized they couldn't win. At what point do you stop listening to the person and start looking at the message? At what point do you stop looking at the person and start looking at the results? Because the results and the message is completely different. The message is, we don't like the result and we're going to fight for it. The results are, we've tried and there's nothing here. People are freaked out right now because in Michigan and in Arizona and in Georgia and Pennsylvania, people are holding hearings. And most of these hearings are in freaking hotel rooms. That's not a legal forum. There was one today in Michigan that was a legal forum. You know what it can do? Nothing. There is nothing legally that they can do at all. The worst thing that can come out of all this is that they're going to continue to get people radicalized. They're going to get people to continue to donate money to the Trump campaign. And maybe sometime in 2021 or maybe 2022, they pass a law that restricts the ability for people to vote by mail, or makes it harder for people to vote in general. That's not the goal. You shouldn't make it harder for people to exercise their constitutional rights. You should make it easier. It's called leveling up in the political world. All right. You're not supposed to make it harder for people. You're supposed to make it easier for them. And it's beholden to the government to make it secure. So when you hear about these fantastic wins, nothing's happening. All the states have certified. Reversing certification is nigh impossible at this point. December 14th, they're going to vote. And on that day, Donald Trump has no recourse but to accept those votes. If they try anything other than accepting those votes between then and January 6th, when they confirm it in Congress, all the Speaker of the House has to do is shut it down, period. And they can do that the day of. And what that does is it basically means that at that point, if there's nobody that can take over on January 20th at noon, that means Nancy Pelosi becomes the president of the United States. There is no way for Trump to be a president again, at least right now. Now, in 4 years, he could run again, but that's 4 years. And quite frankly, I don't think it's going to work. I think that 4 years is too long of a time. I think that as soon as he's out of the public spotlight and he's no longer president, first off, he's going to get banned from Twitter. Second off, this man has pissed off so many different people and so many different media organizations. He's going to have a hard time getting any platform except for on OAN News, except for on Breitbart, except for on Project Veritas. And those are very small markets. I would not be surprised if we see Donald Trump go out with a whimper. I hope this helped allay anybody's anxieties. I hope that clearly you guys enjoyed what I was saying, because a lot of you have been hanging out with me for a while now. But I hope that this has helped in giving you guys a little bit of a kind of perspective on what's going on. If you're watching this and you're a personal friend of mine, I hope this helps you a little bit. I just didn't want to do a lot of, I do a lot of Facebook write-ups for my friends on Facebook, and I've been avoiding that lately. But I wanted to also get some of this off my chest because, quite frankly, talking about it helps me as well. But it's time for me to go make a chicken pot pie and go kick back with my lovely wife, who is wearing cat ears. Your cat ears have changed since the last time you were here. Laura has changed cat ears. But anyways, I hope everybody out there is doing well. And as we do at the end of every show, I do want to say some things real quick. One, thank you all for just kind of hanging out with us. Again, you know, I'm not trying to push anything on this particular broadcast because really that's not the point. It was for me to have a chance to talk with you. If you found us here, you know, you can go and click on our links and whatnot and absolutely go ahead and follow us on social media and whatnot. You know, feel free to visit our store, but that's not really the goal here. Second thing, we gotta, you know what, and I'm going to put this up because absolutely, I want to say again, congratulations, President-elect Biden. I absolutely believe that Biden will be sworn in on January 20th. I think that the chances of anything else happening are very small. We're talking like, you know, fractions of a percentage point. So I do hope that helps. If you want to see again, just real quick, if you want to follow some people online on Twitter, these are some great folks to follow. The first guy, Greg Doucette, is a lawyer from North Carolina. He's very conservative. He actually was considered a Republican until the 2016 election, where he basically was horrified with Trump and said, I cannot follow this person anymore. His legal expertise is bar none, some of the best and essential that I've seen. And he's also very good at talking about exactly how this election cycle will never end up with a Trump presidency as the results stand. There's just no way for it to happen. If you're curious about it, he's also made a YouTube video. If you go to his Twitter handle, you can then go and click on the link that I think he's pinned at the top. It's totally worth your time. And it's actually pretty interesting to listen to. Quest Authority is a really good guy. He's really good at basically breaking down legal talk into layman. So if you're not really sure about what a judge said or what's going on, check him out. He's fantastic. Akiva M. Cohen. is also another person. He's a little bit more liberal than Quest Authority. Does a really good job of breaking down legalese, making sure that you can understand it. So normally if Quest Authority covers it, Akiva will retweet and vice versa. So if one doesn't cover it, the other one will. And then finally, Anthony M. Kreis is somebody who actually is in Georgia. He's a constitutional law specialist, extremely good. Again, very good at explaining things. I absolutely suggest you check all four of those cats out. They will keep you calm and collected and give you real legal advice as far as what to expect with everything that's been happening inside and outside the courts. And they all four agree that there's absolutely zero chance of a Trump presidency. So I hope that helps you, and I hope that you follow them because they're really cool guys. Was hoping you were a coping Trump supporter, hardly any stream anymore. Yeah, sorry, Mike. No, I'm not a Trump supporter at all. We've done, oh God, at this point, we did a pre-election day show. We're normally an art show. We're artists. My wife and I, we make really cool geek art. We make coasters and we make just lots of cool geeky stuff. But my wife and I were also extremely political people. We've always been into politics, and our friends know this who hang out with us, but we've never really been public about it. But there was so much uncertainty going into this election cycle. About 6 months ago, almost a year ago, between a year and 6 months ago, one night, Laura and I just kind of went off one night. And we just did an entire political rant for like 3 hours. And people were just showing up and they're like, can you do this some more? And we promised that we would do political breaks basically at the election. So this is us holding our promise. So we did a few right after election day until we had a winner declared. And then I did it 1 month later just because there's been a lot of stuff going on. Ghidorah, hey, Ghidorah. So Ghidorah said, hope everything is well with me and Laura. We're good. We're fantastic. In fact, Ghidorah, your package is going out this weekend. You're done. You're finished. In fact, if you have ordered something from us, I think the only person who is not going to get their order out the door this weekend, and this is more of like, it may not be like on Friday, it'll be like maybe Monday or Tuesday of next week, is one of our frequent customers, Mindy. But she just made her order like not even a week ago. So we've been wrapping some other stuff up. But if you place an order with us, those are all going out, and it's really a lot of fun. I hope you guys love it. We've got Baby Yoda stuff, and if you guys want to see that, I will plug here at the end just in case anybody's curious. I don't like to do this on this one, but I'll do that. You can simply go to popcyclebaubles.com and you can go and see some stuff. There's a link to our shop, our Etsy store. You can also find us over on facebook.com/popcycle. And if you ever want to, you can also email us about some of the stuff we do at info@popcyclebaubles.com. So there you go. But again, not really the point of this particular broadcast. But yeah, it's looking pretty cool. Yeah, Ghidorah. Actually, hold on 1 second. Ghidorah, let's give you a preview of Appa because okay, so you guys know Avatar: The Last Airbender, right? So hold on, cut. Okay, we're not going to talk about politics for anymore. We're going to wrap this up in just a minute. But for those of you who know Avatar: The Last Airbender, that he has this giant woolly mammoth bison thing called Appa. And so Ghidorah ordered it for a friend, but he wanted it to be this big Appa, but he wanted it to be super cute. So I had to make like a chibi version of it. I'm going to go grab it for you real quick. I haven't ironed it yet. It's been sitting on my shelf for about a week now. I'm going to go grab it for you. I'm going to show it to you so you can see this thing because it's adorable as hell. So hang tight 1 second. I'll be right back. Where's that Appa? The Appa Stripe one? Okay. Here it is. Oh, this thing's so cute. Okay, so I'm just bringing up this part. So I'm gonna try to do this at an angle here, so that way it doesn't fall off its base. But so let me see if I can tilt it a little bit more. So there's the Appa, looking cute as hell. This thing is just freaking adorable, and he's massive. This thing is really big. He's not as big as some of my really large pieces. Ghidorah normally gets these massive, like Godzilla pieces that are just freaking crazy. But I was like, well, how big do you want to go? And he's like, well, keep it around this price point. And I was like, all right. So I did it, and then I realized, oh crap, I forgot the base. So I had to redesign it a little bit down. Like I had to shrink it by about 10% because the base is the Avatar air symbol. So it's got that 3 kind of swirls. And that's a really cool blue and white symbol that he'll stand on. But yeah, it turned out great. Here, let me show it again because I love this thing. This thing is freaking adorable as all get out. So, and again, I apologize for the. There we go. Look at that guy. Look at him. He's so cute. He's so cute. But yeah, he specifically said it has to be super cute. It doesn't want it to be accurate to the cartoon. He wants it to be like super kind of like cutesy. We call that chibi. So I gave him the big freaking bison head. I found a cross stitch pattern that I thought was really cool. And so what I did is I stripped it down and then I recolored it so that way it had some really bold, striking colors, and it turned out so damn cute. So yeah, that's that one. His base is downstairs. And the unicorn, actually, I know this is not for everybody else. You're about to get a personal conversation here for a second. So with the unicorn Ghidorah, I'm going to be building it in a hot second here. And that's coming out. But I didn't know what color you wanted the mane. The wings and the body, all purple, just like we discussed. Like I was going to give him like a golden mane. Is that acceptable, or would you prefer a different color for the hair? So I didn't. I was going to send you a message because I was like, oh, I need to find that out real quick. But yeah, that's my project for tonight and tomorrow, and then these all get packed up and sent into the mail. So we got a big shipment at the end of the week. Yeah, the Pegasus. Yeah, with the wings. I might have said unicorn. I apologize. But yeah, but so like I said, I've made them all purple, but I didn't know the hair. If you wanted the hair, the mane, and the tail to also be purple. But I made it yellow because it makes it really striking. I mean, it pops. It's like, so you got like this really deep purple Pegasus that also has this just really striking gold mane, and purple and blue. Purple and yellow are complementary, so it works really well together. But if you wanted it to be like white or maybe look kind of like silver, I can do that. But I thought that the gold really was going to like pop. And I know you gave me free reign on this, but I wanted to make sure that I had it before I locked it down. Trust the judgment? Cool. Trust my judgment. Yay. See, hold on. Here we go. This is going to go on a t-shirt. Popsicle Baubles. I trust your judgment. So there you go. It's for mom. So Popsicle Bauble. It's for mom. But yeah, so that's cool. Then I'll make it. Yeah, she's going to love it. It's really cool. I actually was able to get it. It's on more or less 1 foot. It looks like it's landing, so its wings are completely up in the air, and its back legs are kicking down. It looks really cool. When you see it, it looks like the horse is jumped. Basically, it's just got these massive wings. It's really cool. You're gonna love it. And then I'm pretty sure she'll love it. But like I said, for those of you who are normally here, we will be doing more broadcasts again. It's just we've been, I got to be honest, with the holidays and everything, it's just been kind of a weird time, and we've been just kind of, getting through it. One thing I talked to Laura about was it's real difficult right now because of COVID, because of the election, because of all this exterior energy that's hitting you. Sometimes it feels like you're not doing enough in life. Like, oh, I didn't accomplish this, I didn't accomplish that. And I read a really great article a couple weeks back that basically flat out said sometimes only how do they put this? My brain just completely blanked. Basically the way they said it is the only way to get through these kind of days is to just do the bare minimum. If you get up and you've been able to, pay your bills, do your job, eat some food, and then you crawl back into bed, and that's all you can do, that's okay. That is winning. That is succeeding right now. Because with quarantines, with people in COVID and whatnot, it's a weird place. The energy is just weird. And with that in mind, I just want everybody out there to know that's okay. So if you're sitting there going like, man, I haven't done anything really cool lately, or I haven't done this or done that, and I've just basically been kind of like, getting through, that's okay. We believe in you. You're awesome. And I hope that I hope that your family is all doing well. I hope you're all quarantining as best you can. I hope you're all taking social distancing precautions. I hope you're washing your hands. And I hope, you're doing the best that you can given all the circumstances, because it's a weird place right now. Raziel says, yeah, I've not been able to do much writing lately, but I did get a puppy, so it all works out. Hey, you got a puppy. That's awesome. I'd show you my puppies, but they're downstairs with Laura right now. So she's downstairs waiting for me to go make a turkey pot pie. So I got to get out of here. I'm overtime. I'm overtime now. She's going to get mad at me. She won't get mad, but I promised her I'd make her a turkey pot pie tonight. So I'm going to go make her that. Guys, thank you so much. Ghidorah, like I said, we're finishing up your stuff. It's going to go out with all the rest of our items at the end of this week. If you want to get something, go follow our links. Again, you can do that just by simply going and checking out. You can pretty much get everything over at popcyclebaubles.com. But again, do not feel obligated to do that. That was not the purpose of tonight's broadcast. Tonight's broadcast was, let's deal with some of these conspiracy theories. Let's talk about it. Let's kind of kibosh all this, and let's talk about what's been going on rationally as people. You all were fantastic. I do hope that this helped give you some comfort and hopefully give you some optimism. I will see you on the next one. So, as we always say, if you're going to go out into the world, make sure first off to wear a mask. Make sure to wash your hands. Make sure to use hand sanitizer. Socially distance. We want you to take care of yourself. We want you to take care of each other. Keep being the awesome people that you are. And I want you to come back because we love seeing you. We love talking to you. And we're so thankful for each and every one of you. Thank you so much. We'll talk to you on the next one. I promise you, we'll get away from politics talk. It's going to happen. And we're going to do more geeky, stupid stuff. And I'm going to try to get some people on later on this week, and we'll just do like a silly broadcast. But until then, you take care of yourself, and we'll see you on the next one.